Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all today to our Tuesday, January 19th, 2021 Board of Commissioners meeting on this unique time slot of 2 p.m. We're going to try something a little different today at this agenda. So again, welcome everyone here. The first order of business is the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to offer it up to anyone in the audience that would like to come up and do an invocation and a pledge. Thank you, sir. If we all can stand, please.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for who you are. We know you're sovereign. There are things going on in our country that we're not necessarily happy about, but we know that you're in control. We pray for our outgoing president and vice president and their families. And as you've commanded us, we pray for the new incoming president and vice president and their cabinet members. We pray that there will be transparency in our government. We pray that they will govern in righteousness, and above all, that your will be done. And Father, we ask you to continue to bless Currituck County. We ask you to bless each of these commissioners as they carry out their responsibilities, and we pray for these things in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Bissell, for taking care of that for us this afternoon. Okay, the next item is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any adjustments, or can I get a motion for approval? Motion to second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. The next item is public comment. And keep in mind, this is your time to come up and address anything you'd like, speak your mind on anything, good, bad, and different. The board is here to listen to you. We will take any notes that we need to, and if we need to reach out to you afterwards, we'll be more than happy to do that. Like I said, I just want to welcome everybody. We do like the feedback, and we do welcome all the citizens to come out when they can and address the board in any matter they would like. That being said, the first person I have signed up for public comment is Pat Roberts. Please state your name and address for the records, and they'll time you on your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, my business address is 1197B Franklin Street, Corolla, North Carolina, and I apologize if I signed up in the wrong manner. I was asked on behalf of the Corolla Community Association to speak to one of the agenda items. If you prefer, I can make those comments now or at the appropriate time.
If it's going to be a specific item, there was a sign-up sheet for that, so if you'd like to come up then, that would be, we can do that. Okay, thank you. Next, I had a Bruce, is it Yoder? Yoder? Okay, if you can state your name and address.
Yoder, like Loiter.
Yoder? Okay.
Tough one. I haven't done it before. I had a question on one thing. On the Carolina Water Service statement that they can be providing sewage treatment. And my question is, it says here, the allocation includes and supersedes all previous allocation commitments. What are those allocation commitments for specifically?
I would say if you have some specific questions about a specific item, if you could get with Leanne, we'll be making sure that the county manager or somebody can reach back with you on that, unless the county manager would like to address that right now.
Mr. Chairman, I believe his question involves one of the items on the agenda, the Corolla Light PUD request. I think it's wrapped up in there somewhere.
Okay, I thought you had a specific question. If that be the case, then would you like to come up during the public hearing on it and then address your concerns then?
Well, if I can express other concerns besides this, yes.
By all means. Yes, sir.
So I'll come.
Okay,
come
so you've got
back.
a couple items. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Okay, that's the only two I had for public comment. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come up and speak a public comment? If not, then I'm going to close public comment at this time. And our next item on the agenda is our commissioner's report. And I'm going to start off to the right this evening, if I could, with Commissioner Owen Etheridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to share something with the people. I read today that in November of 2020, Currituck County had the fourth lowest unemployment rate in the state of North Carolina at 4.7%. That's compared to 3.7% last year in November, which we can see the effects of the COVID crisis during the year. But I do think it speaks very highly of Currituck County's economic engine that we have, that we've been able to maintain a relatively low unemployment rate. I believe they said there were 650 people that are drawing unemployment in Currituck right now. The statewide rate for North Carolina in November of 2020 was 6.1. So we're doing pretty good here in the Northeast, and to be the fourth lowest in the state, I think that's shows very well for Currituck County. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Owen. Commissioner McCord.
First off, sorry I was a couple minutes late. I was dealing with a matter. Tomorrow is the, I don't want to know what round, can't think of what round it is, but the COVID vaccines. It's going to be located at the YMCA. The county manager told me we had 740 people already registered. I believe our number is, I don't know if I'm allowed to give the number, but our chairman sits on that board, so he might say that. But tomorrow, like I said, if you haven't pre-registered, you can call the 252-232-2115 number to register if you want to get the COVID shot. Chairman Payment sits on that Albemarle Regional Health Services Board, but so he might be able to add a little bit more than myself. But like I said, if you want to get the shot tomorrow and Thursday, they'll be at the YMCA, as well as Sheriff's Department. The National Guard's been assisting with it, so I was doing some planning on that for tomorrow, so that's why I was late. But I'll let Chairman Payment talk about the rest.
Thank you, Commissioner McCord. Vice Chairman Beaumont.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had our first meeting of the Veterans Advisory Board in quite a long time. It was actually one of the most well-attended board meetings that board has had the pleasure of having. There were the most significant presentation given that night was by Barbara Snowden, who I think, if memory serves me, has taught every single child in Currituck County for the last 150 years. Mm-hmm. And so no one should be ignorant of history. With that said, she is being asked, as is the Historical Society, with continuing to build a register of Currituck County veterans. Not just there, you can go online and you can register if you currently reside in the county and you're a veteran, but we're even going back and looking at potentially putting together a volume of all Currituck County veterans that actually served in conflicts since way back. So stay tuned for more details on that. If you're a veteran and you live in Currituck County and you haven't registered, I would encourage you to do so. Part of why that's important is it gives us the ability to, when we look on a state level for potential benefits or perks for veterans, knowing how many veterans actually reside in our county help give us some element of clout. And I think at last count there were 238 registered veterans. That is probably not by a factor of 1,000. It's estimated that we have somewhere around 3,000 veterans that live in Currituck County. So if you're a veteran, please get on and register. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Beaumont. I'll go ahead and jump in next. I'll piggyback on what Commissioner McCord said is regarding the vaccines. The Albemarle Regional Health Department, they do not find out until Friday exactly how many doses are going to get for the next week. So as you can understand, the county manager worked this weekend with the Albemarle Regional Health and the Sheriff's Department to try to get the plan of action together for this week, and I'm sure it's going to happen every week until we get get on top of the vaccinations. This Friday night, we were informed that we had 1,300 doses for Currituck County, and we are taking I say the Albemarle Regional Health is taking applications, and it's changed to 65 and older. So if you're 65 and older, you can contact Albemarle Regional Health. You can go on their website, albemarleregionalhealth.com. There's a link there that you can register there, or if I'm correct, you can still call our center at 232-215, a call center, and they'll take your information and get somebody to contact you and get you scheduled for that slot. Again, it'll as Commissioner McCourtez is going to be at the up at the YMCA Center. We will have the National Guard will be helping us one day this week. We will have them one day helping out. But other than that, we should have plenty of staff, our EMS and county individuals be helping get that worked. And as far as the COVID, again, if we don't use all the doses, and we can't show where we used them, then the state could cut back our doses for the following week. So that's why we do everything we can to get the people that are signed up, and then we're going to try to use all those doses we can, because the quicker we can get individuals vaccinated, the better off we are. Keeping in mind that our director, Battle Betts, is fighting with the state every week to try to get as many doses as we can. But there's reports throughout the state that there's some localities that are not using their supplies up, so they're asking them to give them somewhere else where they will utilize them or get them out to the public. So we have been praised for our efforts of getting all the doses that we've had administered. We've had other localities throughout the state of North Carolina contacting Albemarle Regional Health, how they've got the group of the counties together collectively over the years and have come together to coordinate a great working formula. They wanted to see that how that's working, because I think the state wants to kind of copy what Albemarle Regional Health has been doing as a whole. That being said, the other item I want to just touch base again on is the waste our waste sites, the decals out there. Keep in mind the decals are put in place to help save tax dollars. I know some people out there don't understand why they have to wear or have a decal with them. We were going to have to go up on our rates because we were getting so many pickups from the waste management hauling off the bins that were going to be in full. But what we realized again is you've had other people outside of our area, construction people, utilizing your sites that your tax dollars were paid for, and we didn't think that was fair. So those decals are out there to help you help the individuals at the sites identify who can come in there quickly instead of having to stop everybody. If they approach you, you don't have a sticker, they're going to tell you where you can get one, or maybe ask for some identification. But keep in mind, it's just try to help keep it moving and helping the right people use it that are supposed to, that are paying for it. And the last thing I do want to mention is, again, the Board of Commissioners has a retreat coming up, and I'll have the county manager probably touch on that a little bit, the dates, but it is open to the public, and it's coming up the 1st of February. I believe it's going to be 3 days. And just keep your firefighters and first responders in your thoughts and prayers. Still have a lot of activities with fires and accidents out there on the highways. And with that, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do want to say thank you to you. We all serve on various boards, and I was talking to the chairman before we started up about, probably not much really happens on Albemarle Regional Health Services until a pandemic shows up. And we get phone calls and, throughout our regular duties as a commissioner, but I know your phone has been blowing up. Mike has put in a lot of extra hours being on that board, in addition to his regular duties, not only as, just a citizen of this county, but as a member of this board. So just want to thank you for the extra time and effort that you have made to also keep us informed as we go through this. And keeping in with the vaccinations, I talked to a constituent in Corolla because they were concerned that the information about vaccinations wasn't put out on Facebook. Specifically, Corolla and C and some of the other Facebook pages. That's not what we do as a county. We have an official Facebook page, Twitter account, Instagram, you name it, on social media. It's right on the bottom of our main page of our website, anything going on. So the administrators of those pages are the ones that will post things that the county puts out there. So just bear that in mind. Those are not how we distribute information. That's how other people distribute information. So if you do go on the county's website and like our Facebook page, on the upper right-hand corner, you got the three little dots. You can click on that and put down to be notified about posts from that site, and you'll see that in your stream more frequently as we make posts. We do our best to post information and have it as accurate as possible. This individual that called me was concerned because there were people, when the chairman talked about this, that got the vaccination that weren't necessarily signed up for it or weren't in the 1A or 1B grouping for that time frame. And those were extenuating circumstances, and we did not post it. They were giving them out to just anybody because that's not the information we were given at the time. So we give out the information we can based on the information that we have. And that information may change faster than we actually put it out on Facebook with what's happening on the ground. In that instance, I believe we just had more doses than we had people signed up, and they can go bad. They might have to be thrown away. There's a lot of reasons for them to just inoculate people that were there, and ultimately it's more people in our community that have now been vaccinated. So in a way, it's a good thing. So it wasn't intentional. It wasn't an end run to change or do something different than the intended purpose for those things. But just like I said, like our Facebook page, pay attention to the county website. If you're not a Facebook user, that information, the most up-to-date and relevant information is right on the first page of our website on the lower half of that page. So it is out there for you. That's all I've got this evening, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Commissioner Etheridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank everybody in the county for all their hard work for the COVID-19 vaccinations. It has really gone well, and like Commissioner White said, the information's out there, and they're even doing the reverse calls. And as I told the county manager today, I was just upset because they're calling everybody over 65, and I happen to get a call. So, don't know why, but I'd like to thank everybody for the hard work. I think the county's really stepped up, and we certainly appreciate everybody's hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Etheridge and Commissioner Jarvis.
Thank you. On January 13th and 14th, I had the pleasure of serving as the voting delegate for Currituck County for the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Legislative Goals Conference. Although the Zoom format certainly wasn't ideal, the conference did work through technicalities and some serious disagreements to ultimately approve a series of legislative goals that will benefit all 100 counties. And will aid in our effort to lobby both the North Carolina General Assembly and Congress to do things like expanding digital infrastructure and broadband capabilities to benefit our citizens, and policies that support adequate funding for our health departments, especially as we have echoed here during this age of COVID and vaccination dissemination, and to provide revenue sources for our counties for school construction as well as school safety. These are just a few of the 44 state goals and the 12 federal goals that the legislative conference approved. And I encourage you in the next few weeks to go on to www.nchcc.org to read about those legislative goals once they've been finalized. And finally, let me just echo what's been said here, a praise for our staff and all involved, Albemarle Regional Health. Mike, your work for COVID vaccinations, I'm proud to see the number that our county has vaccinated. I know there's some concerns about the second doses. Albemarle Regional Health put up earlier, late last week, about being contacted about the second doses. I feel confident that they will have the means to do that, and that those that have been vaccinated will not have to be vaccinated again. And finally, I pray that our country will come together as we inaugurate our 46th President of the United States. While we may not agree on policies a great deal of the time, I hope that as Americans we can all get together on a desired goal to see our country flourish, and divisive hatred and terrorism certainly are not in our nation's interest. And so I ask that we collectively pray for God's will to be done and that our nation will move forward regardless of which candidate you voted for in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jarvis. Next on the agenda is our county manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me summarize how the COVID vaccine rollout is going this week, just so everybody out there has an idea. Thank you of the kind of the process that it's going through. The chairman spoke to it. So on Friday evenings, we get notified how many doses we as a county are going to get for the next week. Over the weekend, the health department as well as county staff work together to determine when and where we're going to hold clinics for the next week. What we are then doing is taking a list of everyone who is pre-registered, either through the health department's website or through the call center, and we are using our reverse 911 system to call all of those folks and tell them that if they are eligible, which the clinics this week are for 65 and older, that they have a spot available on either Wednesday or Thursday this week. They then respond back and say, yes, I'm coming, by pressing 1 or choosing an option. And then it comes back to us in the form of a database. We take that database, create a roster. That roster for tomorrow has been sent to Albemarle Regional Health Services. So anyone who has gotten that call and answered yes is on the list for tomorrow. And we currently have 740 doses that are spoken for tomorrow. So the only folks who will be able to come and get a vaccine tomorrow are folks who have received that phone call and answered yes. If you can't make the clinic that you are called about, you have to go in and re-register. We tried to work through different ways to do that, and it got very cumbersome because of just the quick turnaround time that we have to work within. We have sent a reverse 911 call out to all registered Currituck County voters who are over 65 years and older who have a phone number on record to let them know that they need to either register on the website or call the call center. I will say that there are a set number of slots that Albemarle Regional Health sets up to register. So if you go to their website and it says it's no longer accepting registrations, it's because they've met the allotment for the day. We are continuing to take names at our call center, and then we plug those in on the back end so that we can keep a flow of registrants coming in. I think it's important for all of the citizens to understand that Albemarle Regional Health Services is being tasked with an operation far above and beyond anything that they typically do. And so we as a county are providing numerous resources to them, which I feel like we should. We're providing equipment, we're providing personnel. We've stood up a call center that is a call center that is staffed by county personnel. We're doing everything we can to facilitate the rollout of vaccines in Currituck County, the same way that every county in our region is doing for Albemarle Regional Health. I think that's important to understand because there's been a lot of questions about, for instance, COVID funds that came into the county over the last year. And as I spoke in front of the board, we found ways to use those COVID funds within the first year. That money then is part of what we call our fund balance. And so now as we have to spend down things for light towers for a vaccine clinic or overtime or part-time salaries or any of these numerous expenditures that will probably roll on for months, we have a way to cover those costs without having to dip into our fund balance that we save from being good stewards of just normal property taxes and sales tax. So the only other thing that I would say is that I've heard some concerns where people have spoken about the vaccine clinics, that folks are coming here from other places and are signing up for the vaccines. There is federal guidance that is out that because these vaccines are purchased with federal dollars, anyone anywhere in the United States can go anywhere else and get a vaccine. So we are legally required to vaccinate anybody who comes through the system and comes to one of our clinics. With that being said, I think we're doing a stellar job working together across organizational lines. I think that if you look at the numbers that Currituck County is vaccinating compared to other counties our size or even larger, we are ahead of the curve. By the end of this week, if we give all of the vaccines available, we should end up with a vaccination rate of somewhere around 3,700 individuals in our community. Like I said, some of those may come from Dare, Pasquotank, or even Virginia, but that's a lot of vaccines that we've given out. The only other thing I wanted to speak to, I had some conversations with board members over this. We are working with Albemarle Regional Health to try to set up a clinic in Corolla and in Knott's Island. We know that there is a lot of inconvenience for folks to come all the way around, and that those are very remote areas to get to. The challenge there is you want to make sure you've got enough doses to do the folks in those communities, but not so many doses you can't give them out, because as Commissioner or as Chairman Payment said, if we don't use the doses, the next week they reduce our allotment by that number. So it is very important that we get the doses out. So I'm working with the health director to figure out the right time to get those clinics scheduled. So just kind of keep watching Facebook. If and when we get those clinics scheduled, we will reach out outside of Facebook to maybe a community group or to the fire departments over there to let them know that has been set up. But keep in mind, it will only be a day or two notice. I mean, that's all the notice that we're getting. So appreciate the public's patience as we work through this extremely unusual circumstance, and bear with us because the information does change very rapidly. I'll illustrate that with this and then I'll be done. We were in the middle of a vaccine clinic that had a group 1 as a certain set of criteria on Thursday, and in the middle of the vaccine clinic they changed what group 1 means. And so it's a shifting dynamic that we're within, and bear with us, but we hope to get everybody through quickly and safely and get our community back to some sense of normal as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Mr. County Manager, could you give us a little update for the citizens out there how we're going to do our retreat work session as far as where it's
Yes,
at,
sir.
setups and all that?
Yes, sir. I apologize. So the retreat will be held here in the Commissioner Meeting Room. It'll be on February 4th from 9 to 3, on February 5th from 9 to 5, and on February 6th from 9 to 3. We hope to have a draft or an agenda out by first of next week. It's going to cover a wide range of things, everything from capital planning for the next year to planning items to issues that address concerns in our Outer Banks. So we have a lot of things on the agenda. It's open to the public, so the public can feel free to come out. It's interesting, I think, to see the different things that are in front of our community, but I can tell you that I've said this before to this group and to others. We've got a whole lot to talk about because we have a lot of challenges, but no problems. All of our challenges we can find solutions for, and we're grateful for that. So if there's any other questions I can answer, I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dyke-Leather.
And I apologize for my computer making noise. It decided to update itself in the middle of the meeting, so it might do that another time or two.
Good. Okay, next agenda item is public hearings. The first item A is PB 84-11, the Corolla Light PUD Phase 11 Outer Banks Venture submitted an amended sketch plan use permit application to allocate 8 residential units to Phase 11, located at 1099 Ocean Trail, Corolla. This is a quasi-judicial, so anyone wishing to speak or provide testimony on this, I'd please ask you to stand and come up to be sworn in. And we'll keep the social distancing. I guess I don't know how many Bibles we have up there, but if everybody could put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you provide tonight will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you, everyone. I believe Ms. Turner will be presenting this evening.
That's correct. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good afternoon. Feels weird to say that. Good afternoon. So the applicant, Rick Willis of Outer Banks Ventures, is requesting amended sketch plan use permit approval for Corolla Light plan unit development. Specifically, the request is to add 8 residential dwelling units to Phase 11, which is the property there at 1099 Ocean Trail. Is this not going to work?
I'm going to move it
Oh,
forward.
there it is. Or did you do that?
I did.
Okay.
So you just let me know.
All right, thanks. So here's a zoomed out aerial photography, you can see the parcel there in blue just to the south of Shad Street, to the east of Ocean Trail. To the north, I'm not going to be able to mouse either, or use the mouse. All right, to the north, you can see Whalehead Club, the lighthouse. Obviously, to the east is, no, that works. This is fine, too. We can just go to this. It's fine. You can see Whalehead, Shad. So Shad Street, it divides Crowley PUD and Whalehead subdivision. So you can see Whalehead there to the east. And then on the west side of Ocean Trail is also part of the Crowley PUD. Here's a zoomed-in aerial so you can see the site as it exists. This is 2020 aerial photography. You can see the water tower. Just beyond the water tower, between that and the building, you can see the top part of the cell tower. There is an existing large building there towards Ocean Trail and a couple other smaller buildings. Those are all utility use. At least the smaller buildings are utility use now. Okay. All right. So the parcel is zoned single-family Outer Banks with PUD overlay, and it's currently designated for commercial use through the amended sketch plan, the approved sketch plan. One thing I did want to note in your staff report, it states that the parcels to the east are zoned SFO with PUD overlay. That's actually incorrect. They are SFO, single family Outer Banks, just the base district, because Whalehead was not a planned unit development. To the north, to the west, and to the south are part of Crowley PUD. To the north and west, it's single family development and some open space. To the south is multifamily development, Beacon Villas, 16 duplexes on that property there at Keepers Way. So the land use plan, the parcel is designated as full service within the Corolla sub area. A community meeting was held on November 23rd of 2020, and the applicant, Mr. Willis, and his engineer, Mr. Mark Bissell, were present along with planning staff, some employees of the resort, the Corolla Lake Resort, as well as some neighboring property owners were in attendance. A summary of that meeting is included in your agenda packet on page 17. Also, the UDO provides for a response to the community meeting summary. So attendees of that meeting may provide a written response to staff, and that was received on January 12th of this year, and that response was shared with the applicant, and it was included in your agenda packet on page 19. It starts there. One thing I will just clarify on that response is it states that the parcel is utility open space. It's not. It's currently zoned for commercial purposes through that sketch plan process. So the property already has commercial designation on it. This request is to add the residential dwelling units to the property. Next.
But you can have residential and commercial.
You may, yes, provided the density is allocated on the sketch plan. So most of the land in the paved road section of Corolla was developed in these plan unit developments. And as part of establishing a PUD, a master plan or a sketch plan is required, and that lays out the land and designates land uses for all the land within the PUD. So you can see here, this is the Corolla Lake PUD. The part to the bottom of the screen that's kind of blocked formation, that's actually Whalehead subdivision, so not part of Corolla Lake. You can see the part that's hatched is open space, so it was designated as open space on the sketch plan. And then there's you can see the lots that were created and some multifamily that was created in there as well. Also, commercial is designated on this plan. And so the ordinance and the transitional provisions of the ordinance, since the PUD is not a zoning district you can come in and apply for now. It's carried over from prior ordinances. There's transitional provisions in place that place limits on use of the property in the PUD based on the total land area. So for PUDs, the ordinance says that the maximum density you can have in a PUD is 3 units per acre. The maximum commercial land area you can have in a PUD is 10% of that land area. And you have to provide open space, at least 35% open space. So the minimum required open space is 35% of the land area. So just keep in mind, those are maximum and minimums, but they are not a by right number. They are not I'm a PUD, so I get that number of dwelling units or more commercial, or my commercial isn't at the 10%, so I can get commercial. You have to come through and request in this process the evidentiary hearing and provide findings for the 4 findings of fact that we find for use permit.
So, and where they sit right now, they are not at the 10% maximum, right? This would not.
So they already have commercial. They already have commercial, and they're under the 10%.
This is commercial, so they're within that 10%.
Correct.
Right?
That's correct. Yes, and I have those. If you look on page 5 of your agenda packet in the application summary, there's a block there that shows towards the middle of the page the number of units. So for phase 11, there are 8 units requested, and that will bring the total for the overall PUD to 603 units, if approved. And so for the specific parcel for phase 11, the density for the parcel would be 8.69 units per acre, bringing it up to 2.51 units per acre for the entire PUD. And then I actually, to your point, Commissioner White, I do have, so this is the summary data table. It's kind of zoomed in so you can see it a little better for the most recently approved sketch plan. So this doesn't, this is throwing me all off not having the thing here. Back to the other one, please. Thanks. So you can see the total residential units, 595 units, and there at the bottom you can see 595 units, and there's 240.52 acres is 2.47 units per acre. And then with this request, again, over here you can see the commercial allocation to the 26.53 acres and 9.93% commercial. And then this is the table for this request that we're hearing. You'll see the 2 proposed future upper story dwelling units for phase 11, as well as the 6 multifamily dwelling units. Any questions on that part before I move on? Kind of skipped around a little bit there. Okay. So here is the site layout with existing conditions. You can see the existing building towards Ocean Trail. It's shown as a 2-story existing building. There's a cable TV easement, and there's a 1.5-story wood building kind of in the middle of the site. And then there's some other utility uses. Again, you can see here the water tower, the cell tower, Verizon utility building towards the southern portion of the property there. Also here towards Whalehead on the east side of the property, there are 4 heritage trees pointed out that will be removed for this project. So in 2017, so the parcel was originally, when the PUD was approved, it was designated for utility purposes. Included a water treatment plant, and then you can see the tower still there. And the property was designated as utility open space. In 2008, the board approved an amendment to the sketch plan that rezoned phases 10, 11, 13, and 14 from utility open space to commercial. And at that time, in 2008, they also added the ability to develop 100 residential dwelling units on phases 10, 13, and 14. And at that time, in 2008, the sketch plan that was approved stated that phase 11 was for commercial use only, meaning no residential dwellings allocated to phase 11. I do want to kind of just go back to the PUD real quick. To the map here, okay. Because I did want to state that when the Currituck PUD was established, the zoning ordinance in effect stated that a PUD is expected to promote a more efficient use of land, a higher level of amenities, and more creative design than would otherwise be possible. So that was part of what was in place when the PUDs were established. We could go back to the site layout now, please. Thanks. So after that 2008 2008 amendment that added the 100 units and rezoned this parcel from utility open space to commercial. In 2017, the county actually removed the building there that you can see by Ocean Trail was used for water treatment purposes. In 2017, the county removed all of the water treatment infrastructure from that building and no longer needs that building for water treatment. So the building has reverted back to the owner, and the building may be used for commercial purposes subject to the review standards of the ordinance right now. I will note that there is an existing issue with the building occupancy. According to the applicant's engineer, the existing building is being used for residential occupancy, and the property is not currently zoned for residential use, and there's no density assigned. And to my knowledge, a building permit has not the building has not been properly permitted for residential use at this time. So this request will allow the applicant to conform to the county's ordinance by properly permitting that residential use of the building. So we can go to the next plan here. There's a series of site plans here. So on this plan, you can see that the applicant ultimately is proposing a mixed-use development. 2 upper-story dwellings are proposed in the existing building out adjacent to Ocean Trail. And then they're proposing commercial use on the ground floor of that building. A restaurant is what's being proposed. And then there's 2 additional buildings towards the east side of the property, the southeast side, that each building will have 3 dwelling units. So 3-story building, dwelling unit on each floor of each building for 6. So that's a total of 8 here. So here's a preliminary site plan was provided. Also preliminary architectural renderings were provided. This is the architectural rendering for the existing building, the remodel. Existing building is currently 2 stories, proposed to go to 3 stories with restaurant on the ground floor, 2 dwelling units above. And then here's a rendering of the proposed multifamily buildings. So for a mixed-use development, the ordinance requires 35% of open space set-aside area. And of that open space area, 35% of it has to be improved for active recreation purposes. You can see here the green here, there's so many greens. One of these greens, the one that's here in the kind of in the setback areas, is showing you the proposed open space set aside for this property. It is, well, the site's 0.92 acres. So the open space that's proposed is 0.44 acres, so 48% of the parcel. So for the active recreation amenities, they've included a swimming pool, which is out adjacent to NC-12, a playground area that's adjacent to Shad Street, a dog park on the other side of that. Here in the rear by the multifamily buildings is a garden area and a decorative fountain and a walkway. And out between the pool and the road is an area for, I believe it's a cornhole court or game area, as well as a game area in the rear. So the open space proposed meets the requirement for the site. However, the location of some of the proposed amenities may have some compatibility issues within the site. If you notice, you leave the multifamily units and then you walk through the water tower, this existing utility building, the propane tank, the cell tower to the pool area. Similarly, from the existing building, you walk through by the cell tower to the pool area. They are proposing landscaping, as you can see here on the site. Some of that is existing landscaping. Yes. So per the ordinance, a use permit shall be approved on a finding that the applicant demonstrates the proposed use will not endanger the public health or safety, not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands, and will be in harmony with the area which is located, will conform to the land use plan and other county adopted plans, and not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities. So I'll present staff's preliminary findings on the land use plan compatibility and adequate public facilities. So the 2006 land use plan classifies this site as full service within the Corolla sub area. The full service designation allows for a greater diversity of housing types. The policy emphasis for the Corolla sub area is to allow for predominantly medium density residential development, 2 to 3 units per acre, with minimal commercial development arranged in clusters. An overall density of no more than 3 units per acre should apply to PUDs, the prevailing development form in Corolla area. The request does not appear to be in direct conflict with the 2006 land use plan with respect to overall density of the PUD. It meets the requirement. And it's not in direct conflict with the ordinance, those transitional provisions with respect to dimensional and overall density standards, meaning the open space, commercial, and residential density. However, there are some compatibility issues within the site and with the surrounding land uses. The site's very small at under an acre, and this request proposes commercial, multifamily, and utility, and continued utility use of the site. The project was not designed or planned from the outset as future mixed-use development, and this is evident by the placement of buildings on the property that do not appear to be a compatible mixture of residential, non-residential, and utility uses. The existing utility uses on site make it difficult to design an aesthetic project that is compatible with high-density residential use. Again, according to the zoning ordinance in effect when the PUD was established, it was expected to promote a more efficient use of land, higher level of amenities, and more creative design than would otherwise be possible. So it may be feasible to include residential dwelling units on this Phase 11 property. However, the density proposed appears to overwhelm the site and make it difficult to design a higher level of amenities on the parcel. The request is not consistent with the following goals and policies of the land use plan. Land use and development goal number 10, to properly distribute development forms in accordance with the suitability of land, infrastructure available, and the compatibility of surrounding land uses. The land use compatibility CAMA management goal, which is part of the land use plan, to ensure that development and use of resources or preservation of land minimizes direct and secondary environmental impacts, avoids risk to public health, safety, and welfare, and is consistent with the capability of the land based on considerations of interactions of natural and man-made features. Since the commercial zoning is already in place, we focused on mixed use density policies and compatibility policies of the land use plan here. Policy CD8 does not appear to be in keeping with that mixed use developments properly planned from the outset, which allow for a compatible mixture of residential and non-residential uses with a pedestrian scale and design are encouraged. And housing and neighborhood policy 1, Currituck County shall encourage development to occur at densities appropriate for the location. Housing and neighborhood policy 3, that the county shall especially encourage 2 forms of residential development, each with the objective of avoiding traditional suburban sprawl, the open space developments, and then compact mixed-use developments or developments near a mixture of uses that promote a return to balanced, self-supporting community centers, generally served by centralized water and sewer. And then policy HN9, proposed residential development that would expose residents to harmful effects of incompatible land uses or to environmental hazards shall be prohibited. And here's another review use permit review standard, the adequate public facilities. The proposed use will not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities. Utility services are proposed for the site, wastewater and water capacity are available. And so the TRC does recommend denial of the use permit because the request is not consistent with the land use plan, and there are compatibility issues within the site and with surrounding land uses, including the requested site-specific density. and I'd be happy to answer any more questions you have at this time.
So, Mr. Turner, I think the biggest thing that I latched onto, or one of many, but there's currently not any basically residential allotted to this phase 11, right?
That's correct.
But it's well within the applicant's right to come in and pull some density to put onto the site. Take the water tower away and utility uses. If it was just a site there, and he could do that, right? There's not.
He can request it. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Do you know how long he has been residing, or how long there's been a residence on there?
I know how long I don't know how long I've known for a fact. You'd have to ask him how long he's lived there, but Mr. Bissell stated that he was living there during the process of some site plan applications within the past 6 months, I would say, probably.
Okay.
Jenny, is there a requirement about, in the community meeting response, there was a concern about the 3-story building versus a 2-story building? Is a 3-story building allowed in this particular area?
As far as I know, it is.
In at Crawl Light, for instance, is 3 stories. It's right down the street.
I mean, a lot of single-family dwellings are.
Yeah.
They have a ground floor where you park and might have an entry, middle, and top.
It is subject to the 35-foot height restriction, right? Yeah.
I did have a question. I know in our packet it said that an easement was held by the county, AT&T, Verizon, and Charter. Are these companies still going in and out of this area?
Any other questions from the board?
The county still holds an easement?
Yes, sir. Non-exclusive access easement. Because the water tower is still there. There's an altitude valve there. I don't really know what that is, but it's on the site plan.
To get from the 2 structures to the pool, how close will they walk to the towers?
Pretty close.
I mean, can
It'll
you
be
give
pretty
me-
close.
I looked at the map, but it's it's hard for me to get an idea of just how close they'll be coming to those towers.
The sidewalk would be cool.
Feet
Because it'll be in the shade.
the proposed sidewalk is 5 feet wide. And
Yeah.
if it's to scale on here, which I assume it is, they'll be within feet of the tower itself.
So while people are working on it and all that, you could potentially be walking on the boardwalk right beside it. Is that correct?
And that's feet not only to the water tower, but to the cell tower as well?
The cell tower here is this triangular area here that's just to the south of that existing building. And so
It's a little bit. It appears to be maybe a little bit farther away. And this water tower is. Correct me if I'm wrong. We can ask Mr. Bissell, but I believe it's the. Is that the base or is that the?
That's the base at the ground.
That's the base at ground level.
There's no access from the ground to the tower.
Do you know how many propane tanks are stored there?
I do not. I know there's I believe a couple shown here on
Yeah,
the
there's-
plan.
Yeah.
I saw that, but I don't know that that's something we need to focus in on. Water, every restaurant, Corolla has them buried. They're at your house. I mean, the propane tank is pretty much a normal part of our life. Just as a footnote. Okay.
Any other questions that we have from Ms. Turner at this time from the board? If not, thank you, Ms. Turner. At this time, I'll go ahead and ask the applicant or the representatives to come up, please, and again, state your name for the record if you could.
I'm Greg Wills. I'm an attorney. I represent the applicant corporation as a plaintiff. As I've done before in a quasi-judicial hearing, my role will be primarily just to introduce the key witnesses and establish a foundational basis. There are going to be 3 primary witnesses giving testimony on behalf of the applicant. The first will be Mark Bissell. He's familiar to all of you all. The second will be Mr. Steve Currituck, who's an appraisal expert. And then finally, the president of the corporation, Mr. Rick Willis, is here. I think our intent for presentation today will be first, Mr. Bissell will present. He will give you a slideshow presentation, give what he believes is the complete layout for the property and the compliance issues, and then answer any questions. And then Mr. Currituck, as the appraiser, will come and speak about the valuation issues that you need to determine. And then we'll probably, I understand there's some folks from the homeowner association that may want to be heard in objection. And then Mr. Willis is here also to answer any question and response to all those things. So that's an outline of what the presentation is going to be. And with that, I would just call Mr. Bissell. And I will just make a note. Last time I was here, I gave out resumes for both of these expert witnesses to all of you. I'm happy to hand them out again. I'm going to put them in evidence. If you don't need them, just wave and say you don't need it. If you'd like one, I'll bring it to you.
Well, we have to have them. That we can't consider.
I'm going to enter one in evidence, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so long as it's entered into evidence, it's up to the board if you actually want to
I got
have a copy in
copies.
front of.
If any of the board members would like one, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, if not, then just submit it.
Thank you very much.
No.
Okay,
I'm
thank you, sir.
intensive.
First witness would be Mr. Mark Bissell. Mr. Bissell, please state your name. Tell us a little bit, tell us how you're employed.
Mark Bissell. I'm employed as a civil engineer. The company is Bissell Professional Group, and I'm licensed as a professional engineer in North Carolina and Virginia.
Mr. Bissell, I'm going to show you what I'm going to mark as Exhibit 1. Can you identify that for me?
That is at least part of my resume.
All right. Well, Mr. Bissell, if you would, I'm going to just go ahead and give us a brief description of your professional background and your experience.
Sure. I've been practicing engineering. I was first licensed in 1982, and I've been practicing actually in Currituck County since 1984, doing site development engineering and among other things, but primarily that. And coincidentally, the first major project we worked on in Currituck County was Corral Light in 1984, where we brought the master plan for this project to the county commissioners for approval.
With that, I would tender Mr. Bissell as an expert in engineering and compliance issues for the matters that are before the board. And I'd ask that the resume he identified be accepted as Exhibit 1.
Yes, good.
Okay, Mr. Bissell, if you would, just go ahead and present the application and the corporation's basis for coming to this body.
Point to me if you want to go forward, Mark, the massive mark on there.
Okay. Well, first, this is just an overview of the presentation. I'm going to orient you to the site and give you a little bit more information about its history, then go into some details of our development proposal. Show some pictures of the architecture. Then I'm going to go through the use permit criteria and talk about the compatibility issues, and then I'll be glad to answer any questions. So this shows the current site condition, including the existing building. And does this work?
Not really. But I can help you out. So as you're describing, I know what's up there.
So the existing building is to the left and about the middle of the site. That's in that area. There are some existing utility uses. I should point out that several of those uses actually have been removed from the site already. There were 2 water tanks that were there. There was an aeration tower that was removed. There were some storage facilities that were removed. And right now, the utility uses represent at most 15% of the area of the site. The majority of the site is currently undeveloped. We identified in our survey 25 heritage trees, live oaks on the site. They give it a lot of character. We plan to retain 21 of those 25 live oaks along with this plan. There are only 4 that are scheduled for removal, and they'll be replaced with numerous new trees. This is the site looking west along Shad Street. The next one shows from Shad Street looking into the site. You can, in the background, just kind of barely see the existing building, which is pretty well camouflaged. This is looking southeast into the site from Shad Street. Someone parked a trailer there. We don't know who that belongs to, but not the applicant. At the corner of Shad and Ocean Trail here, we're looking south. This is where we propose a walkway that will actually connect through these live oaks to the existing multi-use path that runs along this side of NC-12. Here's a view to the east from that same intersection at Shad and Ocean Trail. Looking farther south and along Ocean Trail, just showing some of those live oaks and other screening that we have. At the very south end of the site, this looks toward Phase 12. This photo was actually taken before that Phase 12 development was completed. And then the southwest corner of the site looking west. This shows the cleared portion of the site, which is where some of our development is being proposed, again looking toward the southeast. This is the southwestern corner of the site where the new building is proposed. And this gives you a close-up of the existing building, which is structurally sound, but as you can see, it needs a major facelift. The plan will be to add a covered porch, to replace the roof, which is in bad condition, to add a 3rd floor, replace the windows, provide a new covered entry, and then add some architectural features to make it more attractive.
Mr.
To give you a brief.
Mr. Bissell, before you get too far, Ben, could you back up a couple pictures? So those trees, you plan on keeping the trees on the eastern edge of the property, but that back up to
all the trees that we show along the existing roadways will be.
Right. Okay. So, and that is the right picture, right? That basically that there are houses behind that. That's the back of someone's home in Wellhead. That's facing east.
That I believe is facing.
Let me go back real quick, because you could serve. So your question is about this property line.
Yeah.
Right here.
Right,
Trees that are right here.
Right.
I'll go back. This one to make sure.
That's kind of southeast, right? That's you said the south.
Yeah, I think the tree that you see on the right-hand side of the screen is actually off the property.
Okay.
Is all that like the buffer of those trees between that and the next part that's proposed sand?
So all but 4 of the trees are staying, and then we're adding probably a dozen more trees as part of the site plan. So, as Jenny said, this was originally Corolla White's water plant and was zoned for commercial use in 2008. There was also a sketch plan that was approved by this board in 2013 where the plan actually showed both commercial and residential uses for Phase 11. So it was designated on the residential chart for residential, but it was also designated on the commercial chart for commercial use only. So there was a conflict on that plan, and it wasn't specifically discussed. But I can tell you that the property has been planned for residential use for at least 7.5 years. And we think it's a prime location for a mixed-use development.
You said the Board of Commissioners approved a change in 2013?
Right, that was in connection with Phase 12 of Corolla White. It was an amended sketch plan, and whether intentionally or inadvertently, this property was designated as residential use at that time, as well as commercial use only.
Ms. McCree?
Research has shown that the application did not contemplate, nor was it before the Board of Commissioners for consideration of residential use of this phase, thereby requiring this application.
Okay, so it didn't get approved then?
I'm just pointing that out, that it's, that it was that the applicant has considered it for residential use for quite some time. So moving on to the proposed site development plan. So this shows the existing building with the porches added and the decks added on the left side. It shows the new buildings tucked into the southeast corner of the building. And in addition to the existing parking area, just to the north of that, it shows that the existing utility building that is next to the existing water plant building will be demolished and replaced with a loading zone. And that the swimming pool will be located then where it's convenient to be accessed by both of the residential buildings. And we still have 48% open space at build-out. There's heavy landscaping that is shown here. This shows both existing landscaping and proposed landscaping with a better buffer being provided along the whalehead side on the east side as well as on the south side.
So while we got this view up, the question was brought up earlier about the water tower and proximity to the walkway and proximity to the water tower. That water tower at the base is really just a slick steel structure, is it not? You have access.
It is, and it tapers from the ground level. What you're seeing is the ground level. It tapers up, and so and there's no access to that tower other than through a locked door on the other side of the tank. I'm sorry.
And do you know if there's currently any fencing around any of these utility spaces, like the cell tower, or?
There's fencing around there's a building that has a generator that is fenced in.
Thank you.
So while we're on this slide, I want to just talk about phasing. This won't all be done at once. We're going to do this in 4 phases. The initial phase will involve the raising and the replacement of the roof, along with the addition of the 3rd story while the roof is being replaced. And so that roof is in bad shape and that needs to be done as soon as possible. The second phase, which is really not part of the application, which is for the residential use, but the second phase would actually be the refurbishment of the ground floor and turning that into the commercial use, where there would be a restaurant use there. And we're proposing to put an outdoor deck outside to the north of that. That's where I was talking about the connection being made to the multi-use pass, so that people can be strolling by and they can stop in, get a bite to eat, get a glass of wine on the deck or something like that. And I'll show you on the next slide that while we put the play area there adjacent to that, which is where kids could play while their parents are having something to eat or a beverage or something like that.
Mr. Pistol?
Yes.
How tall is the cell phone tower?
I can't tell you the height. It's
up there.
It's a good height.
It?
It's tall.
It's tall.
I think it's over 100, isn't it? Okay, so, and maybe this is to staff. Before we allow a tower to go up on somebody's property, there can't be a structure within fall distance of the tower. That's a requirement for as long as, on the Board of Adjustment, that was always one of the questions that was asked. So we continue down that vein of thought. Increasing residential inside that fall radius. Is everybody scrambling? Because I've sat on multiple tower applications, and it had to be outside the fall. Somebody wanted to put a tower up, a cell tower. It had to be far enough away that if it fell, it wasn't going to hit the structure.
Oh, the tower itself.
The tower itself.
Oh, I'm thinking about how far is the body going to go.
Depends on the wind. But that's
right,
sick.
Right.
It's sick.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. This tower's been here a long time, and that building's been there a very long time.
Right, phase 12. It's been been constructed since then, which I believe is closer than the building we're proposing.
I don't think there was any requirements when that tower was put there.
I don't think so either, but my point is, it is a requirement now. And, I mean, I don't know that it's a quote-unquote non-conforming whatever with the tower, but I'm just pointing out, part of county policy for as long as I've been on the Board of Commissioners and on the Board of Adjustments was that the tower could not be constructed within fall range.
Is that to a residential home or to business?
So, I'm kind of reverse engineering. Of course, I don't play an engineer on TV, or do I have it? But, you know, here we're looking at fairly increased densities, and I don't know how tall the tower is, but it struck me as tall enough. I mean, to the corner is only 150 feet, right? To the corner of the properties are about 150 feet. So it doesn't have to be a big tower to be able to hit a building.
Okay, well, I guess we'll tackle that one when Ms.
I
Cicero
remember that now, you're right.
finds it, but keep that in the back burner.
So the third phase then would be the construction of the first multifamily unit in the southwest corner, the southeast corner. And then the tear down the existing utility building that is next to that tower and build the final building when the loading zone is put in that place. So if we go to the next slide, moving to the active recreation areas, as Ms. Turner said, we have, in addition to a pool with decks and gazebos, a cornhole competition court, an enclosed playground area, as I mentioned, where kids can play while their parents are having a bite to eat, a small dog park for the residents, and then a garden area with the fountain, walkways, and benches for the residents, again in that southeast corner. Again, we've still got 48% open space and 35% of the 35% requirement is active recreation. This next slide does show the proposed architecture. As you can see, this will be a much more attractive building when we're done than what exists there now. This is a perspective on the two new buildings, which will share a common stairway. As you can see, the architecture is compatible and in harmony with other architecture in the area. This is a perspective on the improved existing building, which after renovation should be in harmony with the community. We submitted as part of our application the public health and safety issues. The existing entrance configuration on Shad Street will be utilized with no direct connection to Route 12, other than a pedestrian connection to the existing walkway. The driveway permit and encroachment agreement have already been approved by DOT. And appropriate access has been made for emergency services vehicles. Potable water will be supplied by Currituck County via the existing water mains on 12 and Shad Street. Fire protection will be provided in accordance with the fire code. Wastewater capacity for the development has been allocated by Carolina Water Service. The existing treatment facility, which is regulated by DEQ and the Utilities Commission. Stormwater management will be collected and infiltrated via the existing basin, which will be able to accommodate the existing or the small amount of additional coverage proposed for the site. We believe the site plan is not injurious to the neighbors and is in harmony with the area. The architecture is similar. The heavy vegetation will be an enhancement. And we've developed a chart, and a real estate professional is here to actually further address the project's impact on values and compatibility, but I want to make a few comments. On the next slide, you'll see a chart that we developed showing the existing multifamily development that is within Corolla Lake. There are 5 existing multifamily phases, actually 4 that have been developed and a 5th that has been proposed, and a mixed-use phase. What we were proposing, and those range in density from 7.6 to almost 14 units per acre. What we're proposing has a significantly lower density than the 3 more recent multifamily phases that have been developed. And it has about a 26% lower development intensity than the existing multi-use phase, which is the town center. Most of the other multifamily phases do have 3-story units, and nearly all of the single-family dwelling units in Corolla Lake are 3-story. And I mentioned Corolla Lake Town Center to show that this is not an anomaly. There's already 7 acres of mixed use with residential units over the commercial now in most of the buildings in that phase. Our buildings at build-out will be about 8,500 square feet per acre compared to about 11,000 square feet per acre on that existing phase. And this slide, I think, really kind of puts it into perspective. But first, I read the comments that were provided by the Community Association and want to state a couple of things about that. First, the community meeting was complete and it was consistent with all the numerous community meetings that we've done over the years. Second, the letter that was provided contains numerous misleading and outright erroneous statements. We did everything right and in accordance with the UDO. And I'll come back and address specifics to that later if necessary. But going back to the slide, this shows the adjacent phase 12 at build-out. We're proposing, and this shows the footprint of the proposed new structures on this site. We're proposing the equivalent footprint of one of the phase 12 buildings, and we're tearing down an existing building to do it. That existing building that we're tearing down is the one that's adjacent to the existing building right there.
What's the, what did you say the density was to the neighborhood to the south?
That one is
13?
Just under 10 units per acre. No, it's phase 13. It's 14 units per acre. And phase 10 is being proposed at 10, so we're at 8.7.
And then the density to the east?
The density to the east is Whalehead. So we got the same separation to Whalehead as the rest of Corolla Lake.
Mr. Bissell?
You said, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
You said adjacent properties, and I would consider Whalehead as being one of those as well.
I'm sorry, I meant adjacent new development, Corolla Lake development.
How much parking is there, both residential and commercial? I know that was a concern about the adequacy of the parking.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that as a concern.
I read it too.
It's on page 21 of the agenda packet.
Parking units?
Yeah, there's 23 spaces, and it's according to the UDO standard.
That's both residential and commercial?
Yes. Yeah, and it's a small commercial building. It's only 864 square feet.
The proposed parking, is all of that going to be concreted, or it looks like part of that might be aggregate?
No, it's concrete.
Okay.
One of the other comments that was made had to do with when maintenance on the tower has to be performed. And they alluded to or addressed take the tower down and rebuild a new one. I'm curious from access from a repainting, because I don't know where that one is. Is that a Corolla Light Tower or a Currituck Tower?
The Currituck Tower. And
Because I know we
the
have
utilities
several.
department did weigh in on that. They
I'm
thought
sorry?
that I'm sorry. I said
Okay.
the public utilities department weighed in, and they did indicate that they thought the access that we were showing was adequate.
When was Phase 12 completed?
Just this past year.
When was it first permitted?
We didn't do that, but I'm gonna guess 2017 maybe.
So about 3 or 4 years ago.
Actually, I think 13 was when the use permit was issued, but I don't think construction started for a couple of years after that. If you go to the next slide, this was prepared to show what could be done if we wanted to truly maximize the site. There's room. This would be a density that's comparable to what was approved in Phase 13. But this is not what we're proposing. This would involve the cutting of trees that we want to save, and this development might be too intense. But what we're proposing is a plan that we believe is just about right, with 48% open space and uses that all have plenty of space. This shows that loading zone, and you've got a 30-foot wide access to that tower. So we have a site that is in the full service land use classification. In straight GB, as Commissioner White mentioned, the residential by right, the upper story dwelling units would anyway. There are several land use plan policies and goals that are supported by this proposal. Well, first of all, going to the full service designation, it's stated that a greater diversity in housing types, such as semi-attached, attached, and multifamily, would be considered appropriate. This is also in conformance with policy HN1, encouraging development at densities appropriate for the location. The proposed development is not within an environmentally sensitive area and has more than adequate access to urban services, including water, sewer, and transportation, both vehicular and pedestrian. The density is comparable to or below the density of other multifamily and mixed-use areas in Corolla Light. It's consistent with policy HN2. The county shall encourage alternatives to large lot development through innovative development concepts. The proposed development provides a needed alternative housing type in Corolla. It's consistent with policy HN3. Currituck County shall especially encourage two forms of residential development, each with the objective of avoiding traditional or suburban sprawl, with number two being compact mixed-use developments, or developments near a mixture of uses that promote a return to balanced self-supporting community centers. The proposed development is a compact mixed-use development with adequate public services and which will be self-supporting. Commercial policy CD1. Neighborhoods serving commercial districts should be encouraged to locate where a collector or secondary street intersects with a street of equal or greater size. The proposed development is located at the main intersection of the collector street and the primary highway. There at Shad Street and NC 12. Policy CD7, attractive environmentally beneficial landscaping shall be provided by new commercial developments and in the rehabilitation and upgrading of existing developments. The site is already well buffered with a heavy growth of live oaks, and additional heavy landscaping is being provided. Overall, the site will be significantly upgraded from its current condition. And again, the development is located in the heart of an existing full-service area and offers needed housing alternatives. And the staff report agrees to the adequacy of the available public facilities. So in conclusion, we believe that the location is appropriate. This property has been commercial for 12 and a half years. It's an attractive and appropriate site development plan. The architecture is compatible. Safety has been addressed. It's in harmony with the neighborhood. It's consistent with other mixed-use and multifamily sections of Corolla Light and at or below the density that's typical of other areas here. It's consistent with several land use plan policies, and adequate public facilities are available. So we're convinced that we have a good plan. It will meet an existing need. It'll be compatible with the area, and we think it'll be a benefit to the Corolla Lake community. We hope you'll agree, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any more for Mr. Bissell, but I would like to bring Mr. Willis up here to talk about what's been actually going on the site and daily activities and that sort of thing.
When we're done with any questions from Mr. Bissell, we'll ask Mr. Willis to come back up for a moment then. Any other questions from this board for Mr. Bissell? If not, thank you, Mr. Bissell. Ask Mr. Willis to come back up, please.
Well, not Willis, Willis.
Willis. Yes.
And Mr. Willis is going to be here. He's going to be able to testify
Oh,
at some juncture.
Well,
if you want to hear from
Yep,
him
right now. Yeah, while we're talking about the site, I think it's a great time to just hit on some of the things that we're talking about.
I would like to just clarify a few things for the record, just for the benefit, once again, of who he is and what his relationship
Please,
with
yes.
the business is. First off, sir, state your name and what is your relationship to the applicant in this case?
I'm the president of Outer Banks Ventures, and my name is Richard Willis.
Mr. Willis, tell me a little bit about your educational background, and if you would, tell me of any licensures that you have with regard to development of real property.
My education, I have a liberal arts degree from St. Mary's College in Southern Maryland, and I am formally licensed as a general contractor and as a real estate broker.
Tell us a little bit about what role you played in the development of the Corolla Light subdivision and what sort of interaction you've had with the Currituck County Land Use Plan.
I came to Currituck County in mid-1984 when we had first acquired, my family had first acquired the property that became Corolla Light, and was made project manager in 1984 for the development of Corolla Light, and as such was responsible for all the land use planning, working with the engineers, approval of permits. I came and sat in front of the Currituck County Board back in 1984 and 85, getting approvals from the planning board, and
so you have direct experience in things like land use development, specifically in Currituck County.
Yes.
All right. If you would go ahead and answer the questions of Mr. White or any of the other commissioners, we'll go from there.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, sir, or afternoon, I guess. I have to get used to saying that, maybe. So, Mr. Willis, you live on the. This is not a gotcha question, okay? I know from experience you reside part of the year on the property.
Yes.
How many years have you actually been doing that?
I moved onto the property full-time in 2012.
Okay. So, and prior to that, you had been staying there occasionally as need arises with seasonal businesses?
Correct. Previous to my occupancy for that purpose, we had allowed Corolla Lake Community Association to use the upstairs area where I live as an office, And then the community association moved their operation over to the Oceanfront Clubhouse, and I started using it.
And did you and I have had conversations well prior to this about other things? Did you not believe that you had that right because of something from the county or some conversations?
Yeah, and the staff kind of intimated what had happened. That under the chart that was done for the PUD, it showed that the residential units were for all the phases. It didn't exclude phase 11 from the 100 units when we got that approved. But what staff has relied on is the fact that under the commercial chart, it says commercial use only, which after investigating that, it appears that that was from the fact that it was already a site that was in use. And that's how that language got there. But they took the position, the county's taken the position that the commercial units didn't apply to this site because of the language under the commercial chart.
And just so we don't actually go on the site, obviously we drive by and see it and don't even think about it probably, most of us don't, but what actually happens there? Is there any actual, there's no processing of water or sewage, or what actually happens on the site right now as a commercial entity or utility?
Well, it used to have an actual water processing treatment plant on the first floor of the building, which as staff said was removed in, I think they said 2017. It was in the 2016 to 2018 range. The county, as you know, purchased the water system with Corolla Light from Carolina Water System and hooked Corolla Light into the RO plant, making that water plant no longer needed. The county wanted access to the water tower because it didn't have a water tower in that area, as you know. So I had to sign for the sale of the site from Carolina Water to the county, and that was one of the things that we went through is, well, what are y'all going to do with it, and are you going to release it back to us? You know, release the easements, and that was all discussed during that sale process.
So there's no actually not a commercial utility take. There's water going pumping in and out, and the staff occasionally goes into the towers needed.
Right. They come several times a week. Somebody in seasonal drive by and go and monitor something at the tower. And when they quit using the plant, they put a tank in the ground with a air meter that sets the water level in the tank.
Okay.
And so that there's no operational activity that goes on the site.
And can the same be said about the cell tower? It's just kind of a passive thing, right? It's just there.
They're passive things. The thing that was somewhat not passive was the use by Charter Cable TV. In the very beginning of Corolla Light, there was no cable TV in Currituck County. And my stepfather, Dick Brindley, was the person who developed the cable system on the Outer Banks. So he developed the head-end system for what became Charter Cable on this site, which is no longer needed because of fiber optic. Everything's generated a different head-end and then sent in by fiber optic and then distributed throughout the community.
And
that's obviously passive.
Right. And power-wise, is there huge amounts of power going through there or anything like that? Or
No, there's obviously plenty of adequate power. There's 3-phase of electricity already there, so it's got commercial power, if you will.
Right.
As it's right there on Route 12. There's plenty of power. There's currently, I think it's a 600 amp meter base or an 800 amp meter base with 600 amps of power on the building. There used to be the high capacity water pumps in the building. So all that is available to the site for use in a restaurant, for instance.
If the county, if we were to grant you this and allow the change, obviously you've heard the concerns here tonight. Do you have any qualms with any fencing going in to make sure nobody can get into anything they shouldn't be getting into?
No, I think that's fine, and I think it's something that we need to look at as we go forward. The water tower as far as walking close to that, the point was made, it slopes back from the foundations, and there's really nothing anybody can do with that. The cell tower location that's to the north is heavily fenced.
It is, okay.
And so that one, I don't think there's an issue with. The new one that was put in, I leased the back area to Verizon, I guess, 3 years ago, and they never really put a big fence around that. But I think I can request them to do it, or I'd be glad to do it, to fence that area off. And I think the point that, the one point I'd like to make about the discussion, since you brought that up, this site had more utility use on it, and it's ripe for redevelopment because of the water plant moving and the building being released by the county. So, this is happening in a lot of Currituck County since, Crowell Light's an old PUD. This is redevelopment of an existing site.
That's all I have from Mr. Wilson. Thank you.
No, not from any, I guess any of the.
I was going to make a comment on because I was out there after Verizon's cell went down following, I think was it last year? Anyway, their cell went down and they were out there trying to, I guess the generator didn't kick on and whatever. So, yeah, the fencing that they put up, I would agree is probably not adequate, but they should fix it.
Yes, sir.
Any of the board members? If not, just Mr. Willis.
Yeah,
you got some. Okay.
We have one other witness just on.
I didn't know if he was done with what he wanted to present, or.
I do want to ask you something, just Mr. Willis, if you could emphasize this. There's been some discussion of easement holders. Okay, so whether it's a utilities company or whoever needs to get access, they were afforded an opportunity in the application process, were they not, to understand what you're doing and to see the layout and the extent of getting access to whatever they need to get to on the properties. Am I correct?
Everybody except Charter, and I intend to cancel their easement, and their lease expires in the next 2 years.
And understand it. An easement is the right of somebody else to come in to get access on their existing equipment. Nothing that's being proposed prohibits or alters or changes anybody's access rights to get onto the property to do whatever they need to do to get to the water
No, sir.
utility.
And none of this development is occurring in an area that they are currently using for ingress or egress to whatever their easement's provided for.
One final point. At any point in the application process, you've received correspondence and you're aware that your engineer and yourself have received input from the staff, and it's gone through a review committee process. That is to figure out whether or not your corporation is complying with the land use regulations for the county, right?
Yes, sir.
At any point in there, did anyone mention any issues about the height or the fall issue that Mr. Beaumont was talking about? Have you ever heard that before?
No, sir, that hadn't come up through the process. And I would add that when the water tower was first constructed, and this also occurred when what was originally the tower for the Charter cable, they were both installed on piling foundations. So they're large concrete underneath the water tower. I think there's 65 long concrete piles that go down in the ground to keep that tip of that water tower from going anywhere. And the same thing was put underneath the tower that Charter built.
In any event, before that issue was raised by Mr. Beaumont and presented to Mr. Bissell, he hadn't had any notice or any idea of that, right?
No, sir.
Okay. That's all I've got. I got one more witness to call.
Just since you went ahead and decided to cross-interrogate just for the fun of it, so no, a question for you would be, has there been a significant change of use on that piece of property since this request has come before the county?
No, and as far as I know, no. I guess the point and the issue that I'm trying to make as a matter of process and procedure is when we come in, when an applicant comes before you on a quasi-judicial hearing, we more or less, just like we've been having a courtroom, we have pleadings, we have an answer, so people essentially understand what the issues to be presented are as we come before you all. And typically, that process is my client's compliance with the UDO and the staff and the technical review. So when we come in here, theoretically, the parties understand what the issues are.
I get it.
And so to the extent that that's a surprise, I'm not saying it's not a legitimate one, but I am saying it is something we didn't know about. And if that is a controlling issue, then at least afford us an opportunity to look into it and maybe respond to it. Normally, that would come up in the process before we got here today.
Agreed, but the reason why judges have been around the law world for a while and they have their own personal experience and I would suggest to you, Mike and I both have recollections where that was, it's just a condition. And I'm not saying it's a show, I'm just saying I'm curious because this is the first time I'm aware of in my tenure as a commissioner where somebody put in a building underneath the cell tower.
Yeah.
So normally it's the other way around.
Right. And I guess all I'm saying is that as an attorney or an advisor to the applicant, you try to forecast these things, and if that's an issue, we'd like an opportunity to address it. If it's not, then it's not. But we didn't know about it until we came in here. Just trying to make that.
You didn't ask.
That's part of this process too.
Thank you.
Mr. Craddock.
Okay. I've been asked if we could take a quick 5-minute recess before we bring Mr. Craddock up, if that's okay. So the board will recess for 5 minutes really quick. Thank you.
When they want to guinea pigs.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get back in session here. I believe you had your next witness coming before us. Thank you.
Call Mr. Stephen W. Craddock. Mr. Craddock, if you would identify yourself and tell me how you're employed.
Stephen Wayne Craddock. I live at 102 Hickory Hill Drive in Grandy, North Carolina. I'm employed by Appraise NC for You Incorporated, my company.
Tell me a little bit about your educational background and identify for me any certifications that you have.
My education was from Elizabeth City State University, where I specialized in math and computer science, also a secondary of Spanish language. I have 4 different designations from 4 different entities as far as professional designations go, above and beyond what the state of North Carolina has given me.
What is your licensure now? Are you a licensed real property appraiser?
Yes, sir.
And how long have you been so licensed?
Almost 20 years now.
Okay. Have you ever testified in a court of law as an expert?
Many times.
In appraisals of real property?
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. I'm showing you what I'm going to mark as Exhibit 2 and ask if you can identify that for me.
Yes, sir. That's my CV or resume.
And does that truly and accurately summarize and describe the certifications and the qualifications you have as a licensed real estate appraiser?
Yes, sir. It's quite lengthy.
All right. And Mr. Craddock, have you had an opportunity to view the site plan for the parcel of land that's at issue before this body?
Yes, sir.
All right. I would tender Mr. Craddock as an expert in real estate property appraisals, and I'd ask that Exhibit 2 be admitted into evidence.
Agree. Proceed. Go ahead.
All right. Mr. Craddock, if you would go ahead and tell the commissioners a little bit about what your opinions are with regard to the valuation or the impact that this development would have on the surrounding property.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? Just so you know, I was hired by the applicant to study and determine the possible effects, if any, that may occur from the proposed use permit and the allocation of residential units on the existing site, and to determine if it will or will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands, and if it will or will not be in harmony with the area in which it's located. First, I'll give you a little background about the historic market trends in Corolla. Currituck County's peak of the local real estate market pricing occurred in July 2006. At that time, the values of properties throughout the county began a gentle decline until 2008, when locally and nationally we experienced what economists call the Great Recession. This is when property values hit all-time lows and foreclosures became the norm across the U.S. The U.S. National Bureau of Economic Research says this recession started in December 2007 and ran until June 2009. We felt the negative effects here of that Great Recession and during and after its so-called ending date. Property values here in Currituck County began to gently increase beginning in 2010 and has remained in an upward trend since then. The Corolla and Corova areas of our county were hit the hardest economically of any other area. Now on to current market trends in Corolla. In Corolla, supply and demand are not in balance. In appraising, we call this undersupply. This means that there is a greater demand for properties than there is of the supply of properties available. Since COVID-19 became a norm throughout the country, vacationers are continuing to come down here in our area now instead of having the traditional vacation during the summer. Employers of the vacationers are using more virtual technology to have meetings and to work rather than having employees come to a physical place of business or to have in-person meetings. This is allowing for more flexibility for vacationers to travel with family and to work on the go. I can see that this trend is going to last for quite a long time in the future. And remember that our vacationers are our future home buyers. According to the Outer Banks Association of Realtors multiple listing service, median home sales prices within Corolla zip code have gently increased over the last 10 years. This continuing increase has been caused by the increased demand for homes in the Corolla area, the decreased amount of foreclosures available for sale in the Corolla area, and recent positive national economic banking factors. If we use the end of 2005 statistics as a beginning reference point, we have the following statistical evidence, and I'd like you to pay attention to some of the numbers I'm going to tell you about now. The median sales price in Corolla at the end of 2005 was $830,000, and that was from 267 home sales. So 2005, 267 home sales. The median sales price in Corolla in 2009 at the bottom end of the market was $526,000 with 110 home sales. That's a severe drop in values and number of sales since 2005. And since then, the median sales price in Corolla last year in 2020 was $601,000 with 493 sales, almost 100% increase since 2005. The 2020 sales statistics is a very strong indicator of the stability of the real estate market in Corolla. These numbers provide undisputable evidence that the demand for residential is not going away and it is still increasing. Sales prices now are at a similar level as they were in 2004, so we haven't quite reached the peak of where we were in mid-2006. I do not foresee that this current positive trend is going to be changing in the near future. Now I'll talk to you about the subject property. I have personally inspected the subject property and the properties adjoining and abutting the subject property, and I have viewed the surrounding neighborhood areas, both the commercial and residential, near the subject property. What I have found during this process is that currently the subject property is not at its highest and best use. If you approve the proposed changes in allocation of residential units on the existing site, it will improve the subject property's highest and best use, and it will increase its utility. It is a fact that the applicant could increase the subject property's density and create an even more probable highest and best use, but that's not really what he's asking for. That's not his intent. The plans that the applicant and engineer have submitted show that the structures they propose to modify and create are similar to the structures on the adjoining and abutting properties, and similar to the structures in the immediate and nearby neighborhoods. This proposal is not an unusual project for the area, as there were already other multi-use projects nearby which have already been described to you by the engineer. With the increased demand and need for housing, I have already proven to you, this also comes with increased demand for stores, offices, and other commercial uses. The applicant's plans, if approved, will help to add that additional business component to this ever-growing landscape of residential and commercial demands in Corolla. Here's some future benefits to the county. Other benefits that will result from the completed subject property, if approved, is not only going to be a benefit for our citizens, but is going to be a benefit to the county itself. Currently, the county has the assessed tax value of the property at approximately $654,000, which means the county currently gets $3,143 a year in taxes. The applicant is estimating that the total tax value assessment of the property after it will be completed will be approximately $3 million, which will give the county $14,400 in annual tax income at our current rate of 48 cents per $100 in value. Not only will the county receive the real estate property taxes from the property owner, but it will also benefit from the additional occupancy taxes that will be generated from the property rentals that will occur in the future. Additionally, the county will benefit from the sales and use taxes that will be generated by the businesses that will occupy the commercial portion of the property. And furthermore, nearby businesses will benefit from the additional occupancy from their own sales of gasoline, food, souvenirs, and the like. Keeping these monies local is the key to all of our independent businesses' success, to increase the diversification of the county's tax-based revenues, and for the stability of the income stream to allow for stability in the county's future revenue and budget calculations. Approving this project is logical, and it will promote the logical and orderly development of the subject property, which is the true crux of good planning and development. At this time, I see no possible unintended consequences from the approval of this project based on what information is known now. So in synopsis, based on all the evidence that has been presented by the applicant and by all of the remarks from county staff and the technical review committee, which I've read over multiple times, and the in-depth research I performed personally for this assignment, I have determined that the proposed changes and the allocation of residential units on this existing site will not injure the values of adjoining or abutting lands, and it will be in harmony with the area in which it's located. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you guys have.
Did you find any other things that were like this? Harmony is a weird word, right? I mean,
It is. It could be defined in many different ways.
Right. So, in your professional opinion, obviously, you think that it is a compatible use and it is in harmony with the area, but in your research, were you able to find any mixed uses like this? I mean, this is kind of weird with the utilities that are going on.
It is a unique site, that's for sure, Mr.
White. We were not asked to perform appraisals, but we were asked to do this study to determine what the effect might be. And it appears that the effects will be positive and not negative to the neighborhood and the subject site for that matter. But no, we did not find another site that had a water tower or communications tower upon it that was developed. And I would like to make a comment in reference to the fall zone thing, is that typically towers of any kind, whether they are communications type towers or water towers, are designed to fall in a particular manner. And I did note, after hearing some comments by Mr. Beaumont and also Mr. Etheridge, that I do find it unusual that if there were fall zone considerations that should have been taken care of, the phase that is south of the subject property site would seem to have been within the fall zone of the tower as well. I did specific research on that this afternoon before coming here, and it appears that there would be at least 5 properties on the other sites that are abutting and adjacent to it that the fall zone would apply to if that were true.
They didn't show us the towers when they came for approval, so, yep. You made a comment, okay, and you've been before this board before to testify as to property values of the adjoining property, et cetera, right? So, and typically, don't you do like quantitative analysis where you do compare prices? Or, I mean, I understand your expert opinion, but what are you basing that on? Because,
Or is, well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead if you have.
I mean, because, and I don't know, but to me, I would think that the neighbor that is in Whalehead that's beside this, I don't know. I would think having a multifamily, development next door, and that's 2 lots that are impacted by that in Whalehead alone, or in Whalehead, that I would think that there would be an adverse impact, but again, I don't play a real estate appraiser either.
I appreciate your comments, and I understand the direction from where you're coming. Any of those 2 property owners that are in Whalehead, if they thought this would have a negative impact towards them, perhaps they would have had the same negative impact questions about the other phase that was just south of the subject property. So I'm not sure if that's a valid point, but typically when you are doing a study like this, you're looking for similar situations. Obviously, because there are no other ones that I am aware of that have a water tower and communications tower on it that have residential or commercial development on it, it makes it more difficult to determine that. But based on all of the other factors, other than the fact that it has a tower, all those appear to be relevant, and they appear to be similar in the comparability of, let's say, the type of dwelling, the architecture, the proximity to businesses, just like the other phases and Whalehead and the other ones that are just down the street from it. It's nearby other commercial entities, it's nearby other residential, other single-family residential, and other single-family multifamily. So I would say that it would be compatible.
And then the other thing, you made a comment about the octax. So octax that would be generated by these units.
Yes, occupancy tax.
And so, and I guess that's a question for the applicant, but is the intended use to rent houses for people that are living there? Because I think to assume that that's going to be spent on, that there's going to be octax generated, that may be an assumption that at least I'm not prepared, given, I mean, I don't know if they're vacation rentals or what. I agree. Sorry. Just
well, in my opinion, and based on what I've read, there's been no clear-cut definition of saying, hey, we're going to make these rentals. So at that point, my comments that I was making more or less was saying there's a possible benefit that may come if it were rented. I'm not saying for sure it will be rented because I've not been told that it will be, but that could happen in the future at any time with any house.
To Commissioner Beaumont's point, and I think maybe another way of asking this is, have you in your experience had to appraise where you had single family next to multifamily, and in that general vein, does that affect property prices? Because that's what we're really asking, right? We've got maybe apartments, condos, and we even have right down the street here at Boston, we're going to have commercial up front, residential, multifamily, and then single family homes in the rear of that property. How does that normally play out in this area for you?
I believe what you'll find with any type of housing, many people look to see what's happening around me. What amenities are there in my neighborhood? Do I have fuel nearby? Do I have schools? Do I have all these other things? But being that we're talking about the Corolla area, it's a totally different animal versus something on the mainland. You're going to find that people look for proximity to the ocean, views that they may have, and those typically have a greater amount of control on how it affects property values more so than am I sitting right beside a tower or am I sitting beside a business?
Thank you. That's
I have a question. You mentioned a few minutes ago that yesterday you were looking at the fall tower where it would affect other houses also.
Yes.
Did you not share that with Mr. Bissell, or?
Yes, that was included within my report that I actually read to you all. Yes.
So you were aware that there was an issue here in the county about how close houses could go to the towers?
I am not aware of an issue that is happening or has happened, but typically within the appraiser's normal methodology of how you work, you're going to look at every single aspect that could be a possibility. And even though this was not mentioned as a target area of what could be problematic, I still did the research myself to verify if a fall did occur, what could happen. And obviously, if something is there on the property, it probably has a greater chance of than someone that is farther away. More or less, that's the methodology of doing it. You try to be as complete as possible in your research on every single property.
Thank you.
Any other questions from this board, from Mr. Craddock? If not, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Okay, if that's all from the applicant at this time, I am going to, excuse me, go ahead.
Did Ms. LaCicero, I know you were furiously pecking away over there. Did you find anything on the fall aspect of these towers? And
Well, we found that a conditional use permit was issued for a 100-foot cable TV tower in March of 1989. The county attorney and I have been looking through the zoning ordinance that was in effect at that time, and I can't find any specific criteria addressing a tower that they would have to adhere to any type of fall zone. In our current UDO, once again, this would have been under the 1982 zoning ordinance that was in effect at the time. In our current ordinance, we do not address a fall zone. We do have, setbacks for towers, and I can read you the criteria that we would have currently for ours. And in the use permit, conditional use permit that was issued in 1989, we could not find any, and pulling the minutes and pulling, and once again, this is 1989, so I haven't had time to sit down and read all this. Couldn't find any additional requirements for a tower at that time.
Thank you.
And I think probably we were referencing possibly around the airport at the time, maybe a crash zone.
I thought it was over at Corova Beach when they put up a communication tower.
We put one in Swan Beach. We approved one.
But the distance from
Yeah, and
versus
I
the
thought
fall
that's
zone.
when we discussed the fall.
Okay.
I don't think we discussed it during that meeting. It was
Well,
just the height. To
There is no
where the home was.
restriction is the point. That,
Right.
Yeah, gotcha.
That's the only important point.
Okay, thank you, Ms. LaCicero, for clarifying that. Any other questions real quick from the board? Then if not, I'm going to go ahead and, the public comment section of this, I had no one signed up on this. However, I believe there was a couple that signed up in the public comment earlier that wanted to speak on this that I think were sworn in. And I guess the first one last is Pat Roberts. If you could just come up again and state your name and address just for the record again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Again, I'm Pat Roberts. I'm the assistant general manager at Corolla Lake Resort. My business address is 1197B Franklin Street, Corolla. I should also disclose that I am a homeowner on Keeper's Way. I own a residential property about 350 feet just to the south of the subject property in the application. I just want to make you aware of that as well. So I have been asked just to speak on behalf of the Coral Lake Community Association as well as the management of Coral Lake Resort just to convey our opposition to the application and ask that you deny the request. In the context that I'm a homeowner and I live just a few hundred feet away from the property, it's also a bit awkward at the least for me to speak in opposition to anything proposed by Mr. Willis. I've had the pleasure of becoming acquainted with Mr. Willis. My family and I know him and have gotten to know him a little bit better over the recent years. I count him as a good neighbor and I'd like to see him succeed, but that's overshadowed in this case by my really complete objections to what is being proposed as the mix of uses on this property and the density of those uses. Specifically, you have had the opportunity to look at the letter that was provided in the agenda packet that was submitted by Ms. Heffernan. She's a homeowner and resident in the Coral Light PUD. Those objections that were enumerated actually follow very closely to the specific objections and notes of concern that were provided by the Technical Review Committee as the basis of their recommendation for denial of the application. I won't burden you with repeating all of those. I know that you've had the opportunity to make yourself familiar with the materials in the agenda packet and hear from folks. Just a few of those I would like to emphasize, though. The primary objection is the mix of specific uses on the parcel, which is compact in nature. It's at a very critical intersection in the center of the Coral Lake planned unit development area. At times, it's a bit of a ghost town. There's not a lot of activity at that site today, but in the warmer months of the year, it is heavily inundated with pedestrian activity. And this mix of uses would subject it to all of the vendors, all of the service vehicles and technicians that go along with not only the commercial use, but the residents associated with the residential use, as well as all of the subcomponents of the water tower, the generators, the fuel tanks. Each of those require periodic maintenance, repair, replacement, etc. While it's probably not of any merit what my background is, I spent 20 years in local government as a local government manager, 2 localities in Virginia. Part of that time, about 5 years, I was a city manager. The other times I oversaw development, regulation, and municipal operations. I've had a lot of direct responsibility myself for siting, financing, constructing, and replacing not only water towers, but communication towers and stormwater facilities. Everything about the co-location of all of these existing uses with the proposed new uses really troubles me as a professional in that regard. At the point that any of these things have to be maintained, there are points for conflict. At the point that you get a new round of visitors every week to this site, there's a point for harm to humans, threat to damage to property, etc. So it just concerns me in that regard. I'm not an expert, but I just thought I would share with you my experience in that. While it's probably not an issue for the immediate concern of the board, an issue that will come up if the application proceeds is the existence of the stormwater facility that runs parallel to Shad Street on the north side of the street. That's been a subject of intense discussion between Florida OBX, Beacon Villas Homeowner Association, and Coral Light. For the last 3 or 4 years, Beacon Villas would like to take over maintenance of that facility. Coral Light would like to take over maintenance of that facility. But the initial developer has held on to that property, but little to no maintenance has been done in the last 4 years, and I'm concerned about a failure of that facility. There is notable erosion and overgrowth on the site that could be problematic, so I just mentioned that as a point of note. Those are the bulk of my comments today. I apologize. I talked to Leanne about signing up. I told her I didn't want to embarrass myself at my first outing at the courthouse, and that was a rookie mistake signing up on the wrong clipboard outside. So thank you for not penalizing me for that. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your service to the people of the county.
I have a question for you, Mr. Roberts.
Yes,
I
sir.
probably should have asked Rick this, but if this passes, will they have use of Coral Light Resort amenities?
Because I'm under oath, what I have to tell you is what's been explained to me and not what I know for a fact. It's been expressed to me by the management and some board members that I believe it's within the covenants and restrictions of Coral Light for this type of development. What is proposed in the application does not meet the minimum square footage for Coral Light. Therefore, they would not be eligible to petition to be part of the planned unit development for use of the amenities, etc.
Okay. And so you mentioned a few things, but someone driving down the road, would anyone actually think that this is part of Coral Light? Is there any signs that say, hey, we're part of Coral Light, or any way to to make this,
The signage is not clear. Speaking to this parcel first, it's not really clear who owns this parcel, what it's used for, except for the conspicuous water tower on site. So it's not made clear by signage or any other indicators. There's a sign immediately across the street that identifies welcome to the Whalehead community. It's marked as a private community, but there's nothing conspicuous that marks it as being a component of Coral Lake Resort.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
One question, clarify.
Please.
You say the drainage area is on the north side of Shad Street,
Yes, sir.
not on the side that this property's on?
Yes, sir, but it's ideally situated to serve this parcel, but the way it's been maintained and managed through ownership, and there's some issues with the ownership of the permit, make it a technical difficulty or a bit of an administrative burden. It's stated very easily that that facility is adequate and will serve it, but I just bring it up that it's a matter of dispute and it's not being properly maintained.
So anything done on this parcel would not necessarily interfere with what's going on with the drainage. It's just a paperwork issue.
For the most part, with some of it being a maintenance concern right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next, again, we had, do you want to speak as Bruce Yoder?
Mike Loiter.
If you state your name and address again, please, sir.
Bruce Yoder, 1102 Morris Avenue, Corolla.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to give you a little history and try not to get bored. My house was the fifth house built in Corolla Lake. Before we built that house, we had one also done by Dick Brindley, North Point, down the beach. Dick Brindley was an incredible man. I liked the put idea. I bought into it. Dick Brindley said, we'll build a 25-yard 4-lane pool. He built a 25-yard 8-lane pool. He said he'd build 2 indoor tennis courts. He built Hartrue tennis courts, which are much more expensive to maintain, but they're much better for tennis players if you're tennis players. The initial PUD, which is done in conjunction with Currituck County, had an inn right behind the current oceanfront pool area. He eventually decided not to build the inn, but he gave most of that land that the inn would have taken, which was significant, to the association. 6 or 7 years ago, he was proposing a theater at the north end of the PUD. I don't know if any of you remember it. I stood up and supported that. Not that the neighbors, the Corolla Lake neighbors that had houses next to that were happy about it, but I supported that. Unfortunately, over the last 5 or 6 years, the total approach to Corolla Lake has been one of profit. One of profit. It was mentioned in the presentation on density. One of the locations was, I believe it's 13, which is at the south end. There is only 8 feet between each of those units. They are only 750,000 square feet. 750 square feet. That's the one unit or developed area that does not meet the Corolla Lake Community Association's requirements, their architectural reviews. That's the only one. I don't know how it got passed, but it got passed. Nobody was around it, whenever it went through. That is in total conflict with our architectural standards. Our architectural standards required 1,800 square feet for a unit. The units Could you put up that early? It's one that shows the units and the size of the units and how compact they are. That one?
No, it's just the actual buildings.
Some of those trees have already come down, incidentally.
No, you blew past. There you go.
No, it's just the aerial view. All right, no, that's it. Those units there meet the 1,700 square foot requirement for membership in Corolla Lake.
I don't believe they're part of
Nothing, that's, other than the unit at the south end, which is not in the, cannot use the facilities of Corolla Lake because they do not conform to architectural standards. I personally don't understand how the county can support a situation where, according to the original PUD, there were at that time requirements on square footage for buildings. And they have always applied until the last couple of years. And for somebody to say that this conforms to the local neighborhood, there's not a single family home adjacent to these for almost 500 feet. Every house around there meets the standards. I've been terribly disappointed with the last 4 or 5 years, and I hope it's ended. Thank you.
Well, before you step down, Mr. Schroeder, you brought up an interesting point. So, the village shops.
Thank you for asking me. The village shops were in the original design. They've been there, I think, since 1990.
That's about right.
And they have their commercial downstairs, and yes, upstairs they have apartments. They're mostly apartments. They are apartments, and they've been there that long. And that was all part of the original PUD plan. It was not, it was not a surprise along the way.
Now, the reason I bring that up is because you have, if we take away the water tower, right, the utility uses, you're basically talking about a very similar thing happening here, where you have mixed use between residential and commercial uses on the same property adjacent to structures within Corolla Light Resort Community Association. And so the reason I bring that up is, that there's a comp in Corolla Light PUD for something similar if you take out the tower, which is probably everybody's big hang-up is the fact that tower's there, the water tower's there, and these utility things. I'm guessing, anyway, that's probably a major portion of people's hang-up about this site.
Well, the people who came to the last meeting, there were a number of them there. I'd have to disagree with what their feelings were as they were expressed in that summary thing, which didn't seem. You can start off with, they finally had the meeting rescheduling twice, all right? They had it in a location where you would have needed a flashlight to be able to look at what they were shown. And they're polite people. They're not like I am. All right, I mean, they're gonna, when they came back and they read that and they said, oh, you know what, maybe, because we didn't get vociferous about things, and frankly, it was very difficult to follow. I was not there.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I'll go ahead and invite the applicant or representatives back up if they have anything else they'd like to address, what they heard, or.
We don't have any specific information, but we are available to answer any questions. If there's anything you heard that prompts further questions in your mind, please do ask them. We'll be glad to present.
I think for me, and it probably not as you specifically, Mr. Wills, but to the county staff, the development was beside the Brinley building, those new little condos that are going in there. Did that come before the Board of Commissioners, or was that I don't remember seeing those things. Maybe I was just...
Speaking quarters? Yeah, speaking quarters. And that was part of the 2008. So in 2008, there was that additional 100 units of density that was put over, sorry, I had to... bring that up. Proposed future multifamily, 100 units of density for phases 10, 13, and 14. And then in 2014, there was the additional 32 that came forward before the board at that time to get that additional density. And once that additional density is applied, then it becomes an administrative task as far as to bring it through the process, the major site plan process. Beacon Quarters was condoed, so they did not have to come back. They did the condo process,
right.
And so they did not have to come back and do a subdivision and use the preliminary plat use permit process that you all are familiar with. But those were the two times that additional density was applied to Corolla Light PUD.
So, and just to clarify, you said those were originally intended to be a high-density projects, right? That they were, or no?
No,
13?
they were...
Or multifamily?
Multifamily, 100 units of multifamily spread over phases 10, 13, and 14.
Okay.
And then 12 came back in later for an additional 32 units of density.
Okay.
So...
Also, Mr. Bissell did have some comments he wanted to add with regard to towers.
Just in regard to your last comment there, I believe that those phases also had a utility designation originally. One thing I want to mention is that we're providing at the sketch plan stage way more detail than we typically would, and obviously more than was provided on phase 13. That's it's because this is kind of a unique animal. We thought, and working with staff, we just developed more detail. They asked for it, and we provided it. But I also wanted to talk about the water tower. I do remember when, way back years and years ago, when there was a water tank fall radius in the UDO, and that was taken out. I don't know when it was taken out, a long time ago, but I think it was taken out when people realized that water towers don't fall like this. They have those pile-supported foundations with a lot of concrete, and if they normally they don't fall, but if one were rusted and was never maintained, if they fall like this.
My line of questioning had nothing to do with water towers. It was towers that got put up, but whatever.
I'm not an expert in radio towers. My guess was that they would also
Make that a note.
collect
Mark
the
was
same
not a
way.
radio tower. That fits.
With that aerial right there, there's only one lot adjacent to this in Whalehead that's occupied with a house.
There's two. Oh, with the house, right.
Right, yes.
I have a question for the staff. They listed several policies in the land use plan, the UDO and land use plan that support their application. Do you concur that those policies support their application?
I think our policies are very general in nature, and probably in reading those you can find several that support it and possibly several that don't support it, depending on your point of view and how you're reading those policies. Land use plan policies are typically very general unless there's a very specific item that they're addressing. So I think we have some policies that we feel that it doesn't address, and they feel as though there's some policies that this would address, that their development would address.
That was a good political answer.
So it's quid pro quo.
They're very general, and you can read them depending on your point of view, how you want to read them.
Any other questions from the board here? I will remind the audience out there that may be watching that as this board sits, as a quasi-judicial hearing here, we do have to make our decisions based on expert testimony that was presented either for or against this during this meeting is how we're going to be basing our decisions. No hearsay or opinions that we use for our decisions. So I'll ask the board again, is there any other questions for staff or anything out there that you may want to ask? Hearing no other questions, I am going to entertain a motion from this board.
Need to close it.
So, excuse me, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'd like to close the public comment section, I'm sorry, of this meeting and open the floor then for a motion.
Typically we look to the commissioner from a district to make a motion. I myself, I'm not ready to make a motion at this time. So I would ask that we table this for a motion until the first meeting in January, which would be the
February.
February the 2nd. I'm looking at January's calendar bleeding into February. February 2nd, to have a little time to ponder this and understand if it is approved, staff has some conditions, so we need to work through that if we decide to go that way or not. If I decide to make a motion for or against approval. So my motion would be to table this for a motion until February 2nd.
As county attorney, is that a doable time frame for having a motion to
I mean, first of all, the motion to table consideration is certainly appropriate under your rules. Whether a couple of weeks, I don't know what
That's
Commissioner White has in mind in terms of
more for me. I
further
need to chew
study.
on this longer than a weekend. It's an odd duck, for sure. And so that's just me personally. If there is not support and another commissioner wishes to make a motion, then certainly.
Well, we have a
entertain it.
motion, I mean,
Right.
so
If
I'm
there's
looking
not
forward to
support
the
for it.
second then. We do have a motion on the floor to table this until February 2nd, first meeting in February.
A point of clarification, the first meeting in February, I think, is the 1st.
First, sorry.
Excuse
yeah.
me, I apologize.
I'm off a day.
Okay. Well, I didn't look at a calendar either. I was just
That would
going
be
by-
February 1st then.
Okay,
I'll make my
February
motion.
1st. Do we have a motion, or do we have a second for that motion?
Would they, if this motion was seconded, would they have to re-present everything?
No, that's done.
I'll second his motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion on this? With no further discussion, then I'll go ahead and ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We will rehear this on February 1st.
We will finish hearing.
Or, well, finish hearing, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item under public hearings is PB 18-23, the Foss Development, PRD Phases 1 through 5. Moac Development LLC submitted an amended preliminary plat use permit application for the purpose of connecting the development to an off-site wastewater treatment facility, a major facility, modify the clubhouse area, and enlarge the pond and adjust the phasing lines. Foss Development is a planned residential development, and phases 1 through 5 include 301 residential units and associated infrastructures. And I'll ask anyone that wishes to speak on this, please come forward to get sworn in. Do we have, she could, Were you coming up, or were you just? Oh, okay. Move. All right. Thank you. I thought you were coming to get sworn in. All right. Place your left hand on the Bible. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you present tonight will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Cicero, I believe you have this one.
Good evening. I think we've gone into the evening now.
Yeah, we do evening now.
No, not quite.
No, it's not even 5 o'clock.
Yes, the request before you is an amended preliminary plat use permit for the false development. This is to coincide with the rezoning that the board considered in December of 2020, just this past December, to remove the on-site wastewater treatment plant and allow connection to the Eagle Creek wastewater treatment plant, Currituck Water LLC major utility, Currituck Water and Sewer LLC major utility. Remove the RV parking from phase 1, but provide temporary RV parking until the other phases are approved. Shift the location of clubhouse and stormwater ponds, modify phasing lines, and modify boundaries to match. This is the aerial of the false development. Keep going. It is zoned a PDR, Plan Development Residential. Once again, you saw this in, approved the rezoning in December, this past December. It is full service in the 2006 Land Use Plan and limited service in the Moyoc Small Area Plan. So the amended request, well, let me give you a little bit about a project background on this. The original approval, original PDR, Plan Development Residential, was approved in May 2019 with 513 dwelling units, a mixture of 2 types of townhomes and some single-family dwellings, traditional neighborhood T&Ds, traditional neighborhood development, and the conventional lot, along with up to 22,000 square feet of commercial. That was approved, the zoning part of that was approved in May of 2019. In November of 2019, the applicant requested an amendment to that rezoning, remember, to that Plan Development Residential Master Plan in terms of conditions to convert 72 two-sided townhomes into 35 traditional neighborhood development townhomes and increase single-family dwelling lots from 350 to 535, lowering the total dwellings from 513 to 479. So we've had 2 amendments. We had a rezoning and then an amendment to that. In January of 2020, the preliminary plat use permit was approved to reflect that November 2019 change, rezoning change. And now this is coming before you as a preliminary plat use permit to reflect the changes that were approved in December for the zoning changes. So what's before you tonight is the preliminary plat change to, well, the designated area for wastewater treatment has been removed for a wastewater treatment plant because they intend to connect to the Eagle Creek wastewater plant. The area, Ben, could you? Sorry, no. I need, yeah, there you go. This is the area right here where the clubhouse is going to be changed and modifying some of the phasing numbers. So to coincide with what was approved at the rezoning, there has been some modified numbers, and in your staff report on packet page 47, you can see how those numbers in phase 1, there's going to be 71 dwelling units. Phase 2 would be 65. Phase 3 has been changed to 51. In phase 4 would be 77 dwelling units, and in phase 5 would be 37 dwelling units. So now you can. Is there any, I guess, questions at this point about what the request is, of where we are in this process?
I don't have a question about that, but I did want to ask, it seems like we've had many times that we keep seeing amendments and changes. Is this because of something on our end, or where exactly does the problem lie? Is it when it's submitted, every time I turn around, it seems like we've got something with the false flag.
I think it's, from what the applicant has told me, but that is a good question for the applicant or the applicant's representative when they get up here. That initial one, they were approved in May of 2019. And then in that November one, the market had changed. And so they were changing the product they were offering as far as the townhomes. And they were changing the density. So that was a rezoning change.
And they also changed where you parked.
Yes. The rezoning change, then a situation presented itself to them that then they did not have. They would be able to connect to an existing wastewater treatment plant, so they would not have to construct their own wastewater treatment plant, and that was again another change. So I think it's changes on the applicant's end.
I didn't know if it was something the county needed to improve on, or if when the applications come, just.
I don't know.
And I'm hearing something.
The dog.
That's a dog. Kevin, the canine unit's outside. Is need you to.
Typically, you would hope something like it's called a planned development residential, that would be very well planned out, and once again, this is maybe a question better for the applicant. As markets change and as things such as the cost of constructing a wastewater treatment plant, those are the two big requests that we have seen for changes with this.
So there's been several little changes.
And then within that, there's been smaller changes.
Thank you.
So with that, this is a use permit before you. And a use permit shall be approved on a finding that the applicant's demonstrated the use permit will meet the following findings of fact: that the use will not endanger the public health or safety, that the use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands, will be in harmony with the area which is located, the use will be in conformity with the land use plan or other officially adopted plans, and the use will not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities. So these are the preliminary applicant findings, and I will let them, the applicant, go through these findings of fact, because typically staff will give you input on two of them, which is the adequate public facilities, whether the county has adequate public facilities, and whether it's in conformity with the land use plan. So these findings of fact are preliminary ones from the applicant, so we'll keep going through those. And so the use is in conformity with the land use plan. Preliminary staff findings is that at its May 6, 2019 meeting, the Board of Commissioners determined that this development was compatible with the land use plan, the Moac Small Area Plan, and the surrounding neighborhoods because the proposed conditions for this property will improve drainage problems on the property and with nearby ranches and subdivisions. If improvements can be made to the drainage system of on-site properties, and at the PDR, the planned development residential is compatible within the existing Moac Township subdivisions. And the other finding of fact that staff typically gives input on is the Villette County's ability to provide adequate public facilities. Preliminary staff findings that when the Board of Education redistrict this to completely within the Shawboro School District, that it is now, there is capacity. Considering our generation rate with the Tischler study, there is capacity at Shawboro for the students, current students and students that will be generated from this development. So staff Technical Review Committee recommends approval of this amended preliminary plat use permit because it complies with all applicable review standards so long as the following items are still addressed, that they still adhere to the July 2019 required stormwater improvements. That map is in your packet at the end of the, yes, it is packet page 55. The amended phasing schedule that was approved at the rezoning will be adhered to. And the applicant has demonstrated the proposed use will meet the use permits review if the applicant does in his presentation demonstrate that the proposed use will meet the use permit standards in the UDO, and the conditions of approval are necessary to ensure compliance with the review standards of the UDO to prevent or minimize adverse effects for the development on the surrounding lands, including all items in number 1 above. So you see what was previously approved. The area near the rear of the property right here is being changed from a wastewater treatment plant and disposal area to an area of will eventually be RV parking and storage, and some phasing lines, a little bit of change to the clubhouse area right in here, a little changing that location, and then the stormwater ponds associated with those and other minor changes with this application. Oh, these are the approved stormwater conditions from the original approval. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Do you know where they are with Eagle Creek, the Utility Commission, where that stands?
I do not. Once again, that would be a good question for the applicant. They would need to go before the utilities, North Carolina Utilities Commission, and I don't think that is a very quick process. So that would be a good question for the applicant.
So you don't know if they're working on the problems at Eagle Creek?
I do not.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the board from Ms. Cicero? If there is none, thank you, Ms. Cicero. I'll ask the applicant to come forward, please. Name and address, sir, for the record.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to suggest it would be appropriate that you make inquiry as to whether the applicant is represented by an attorney for this hearing.
Okay, so are you represented by an attorney?
We are not
from this hearing?
represented by an attorney for this
Okay.
hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'm required by the ethics opinion of the North Carolina State Bar to state that a person who is unlicensed may not represent another party in a quasi-judicial proceeding, and to do so will constitute the unauthorized practice of law.
So noted. Yes, we did. So do you understand that, Mr. Bissell, you understand that, correct?
I do understand that, and I'm not planning to practice law, but just to present my client's case from an engineering point of view.
Okay, and if you choose to move forward, I believe you can.
Well, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, can he
even be
move
established
forward?
as an
Or?
expert witness, right?
There doesn't prohibit the
Yeah, he can.
going forward. It will be.
It's on his discretion. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, that's why if you'd like to proceed without representation, you're more than welcome to. It's. What would you like to do?
I'd like to proceed.
Okay, then. There you can. Please go ahead and proceed then.
The first thing I'd like to do is answer the question about why we're making this application. And the reason is that the Eagle Creek facility was approved as an off-site wastewater, or as a major utility that was available for off-site wastewater service. And you may recall that back in the very beginning of the FOST request, we had submitted two plans, one that showed a wastewater treatment plant on-site, and the other that showed wastewater service would be provided off-site. And staff determined that only one of those requests could move forward. And so at the time, since there was no off-site facility that had been approved for this use, we withdrew that and just proceeded with the on-site treatment plant. Now that Eagle Creek has been approved as the regional utility, and this board right after that then approved an amendment to the PDR plan, an amendment to the terms and conditions for FOST that would allow it to connect to that facility. And so what we are doing now is which has to be done as a separate step, is to request amendment to the use permit and the preliminary plat to correspond to the revised PDR plan that this board approved in November.
Excuse me, but I think my question was, when things come, I know we've changed the number of houses, we've changed the parking, we've changed just several things, and I was just wondering if it was something on the county's part or how it's being submitted, because we've gone through several processes with things being changed on the false track.
Well, and because we're not building a wastewater treatment plant in the back, there's no reason to go to the back in phase one to put with the RV parking, so there's a temporary parking facility proposed closer to the front in phase one. One thing I would like to correct is that wastewater treatment site is still being proposed as a site for effluent disposal. Just will not have a treatment plant.
I was talking about parking in the townhouses. We went from parking in the back to parking in the front.
Well, that section was revised.
Okay, that's what I'm asking, why?
Actually, that housing product was revised so that instead of back-to-back units, it's standard townhome units. So that entire section was redesigned.
My thing was, why was that not, when you first submitted, why was that not submitted first? It came a couple of months later to change the parking. It looks like, you know, some of that stuff should have been taken care of up front. That's just my thoughts.
Well, let me say one. I have one other comment on that question. The Currituck Unified Development Ordinance, the way it was rewritten and readopted in 2013, provides very little flexibility and very little authority for anything to be changed at the staff level. Now, the old UDO gave staff more authority to determine, well, this is not a major change, this is a minor change and something that can be approved at the staff level. There are very few things now that can be approved at the staff level. And in fact, I'm going to tell you that we have already submitted an application to revise this yet again. So we'll be back soon. And that is because there are, in the approved plan, 4 connections to the Flora tract to the west. And we're now proposing a 5th connection where, you know, an additional stub road would go over there that will work better for the long-term plan for that area. But the UDO does not provide the authority for the staff to approve that as a minor change. So we have to go through this process all over again to make that one, what I think is a very minor change.
But before you submit it, can't you sit down with them over these issues?
No, for example, the development plan that's being proposed for the Flora tract has changed. And it was changed because this board didn't like the plan that was proposed before that would have meshed up with that original plan.
Wasn't part of last month's meeting on this because in order to meet from an engineering perspective, the side, I'm going to use canal, but it's water feature had to grow. Is that? Yeah. And that resulted in shifting property lines and shifting. It's a big project, right. And I've built a house, and it never goes according to the plan. There's always things, but before you getting up here, I kind of wanted to ask why this has to be a quasi-judicial in the first place, and to address some of your concerns, you know. And again, you're going to go into the facts, and that's great. But expanding the size of the swimming pool, I don't see. I'm just curious. And it may be because it's a use permit, and it's got anything that you do to a use permit's got to come back through here. But this is brutal and painful. I agree.
You're correct.
I'll be grateful when FOSS isn't one of our terms.
Another thing, the terms and conditions document actually has a requirement that the applicant submit an annual phasing up plan update. And so part of this is that we did submit an annual phasing plan update in November.
Okay. We're victims of the system.
do know that they have been in touch with the Utilities Commission, and they are in touch with DEQ, and they are working to have on an order declaring utility status, and they're working on solutions to those existing problems, but I don't have any more detail than that to share right now.
But if they don't get approved, you don't occupy a building.
Exactly.
Okay. It's just a really nice field with big canals.
So anyway, that is the major reason for the appearance here, is to request that the amended, or that the preliminary plat and the use permit be amended to now correspond with the amended PDR plan that allows that off-site utility connection. You know, we did make some tweaks to the orientation of the clubhouse and enlarge the pond, but I don't think those are changes that would require us to come here. Those are just kind of incidental, so we're pointing them out. And since we're not building the wastewater treatment plant in phase one, then we don't need to build a road all the way to the back in phase one for the RV parking, and can temporarily put that up front until we're ready to do that canal crossing and so forth.
Mr. Bissell, I got a question for you. In your experience, which is large, have you ever submitted a plan that looked like it did when you first submitted it, when it went to final plat approval?
Very complex.
But there's always been amended sketch plans and preliminary plats. Because as you try to improve your product, you've got to make the changes.
Sure. Look at projects like Coral Light and Monterey Shores and Currituck Club, and all of those developments have submitted numerous plan amendments over the years as market conditions change, as new information comes available, so forth. So there are a lot of reasons, and I think I don't think there's a solution for that concern. One solution, I think, would be to give staff a little bit more authority to approve minor changes.
I agree with that.
Okay, let's get back focused then, and that discussion come up at a later date. Let's get back on the matter at hand.
And so we tweaked the phasing plan to match, and actually 4 units have moved from phase 3 back to phase 4. Other than that, the same number of units are in each phase. We've adhered to the 71 units in phase 1 and the 65 in phase 2. The 71 in phase 1 was actually a condition of approval. We have submitted our response to the applicant use permit review standards, and those standards are essentially the same as they were in the original approval and the amended approval and the previous amendment. You know, the transportation, the potable water, the wastewater, the stormwater management plan, those improvements are actually all under construction. Those are carrying through this approval. I'd be glad to go through them in detail if the board chooses. Otherwise, I'd like to just indicate that they're in the packet and they stand and they're consistent with what's been approved in the past. The county commissioners agreed that the use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands and will be in harmony with the area, and it has been in harmony for each review, and the only change that would affect the adjacent properties is the relocation, is the removal of the wastewater treatment plant from the site. So we would submit that since it was in harmony and not injurious before, it is actually probably more in harmony and less injurious now. And again, there's a whole several paragraphs of findings on that I would be glad to read into the record if you'd like. Otherwise, again, they're consistent with what has been approved by each other phase. But if you'd like, I will go through them.
Any board want to go through them, or are they okay? I think we're good with that, Mr. Bissell.
As staff indicated, the Department or the Board of Education did determine there are adequate public facilities, and that it's in conformance with the land use plan. So I won't further elaborate on those 2 points. But I'd be glad to answer any questions about the application or about the use permit criteria.
Any questions from the board from Mr. Bissell? Okay, then thank you, Mr. Bissell. I will now open up the public hearing. And I have nobody signed up to speak on this. Is there anyone in the audience that may have come in late that would like to speak on this? Okay. All right, hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing then on this. And is there any further questions from the board on anything? If not, I'll ask the board for a motion at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to approve PV 18-23 Falls Phases 1 through 5, amended preliminary plat use permit with staff recommendations because the applicant has demonstrated the proposed use meets the use permit review standards of the UDO. Use permit review standards worksheet. Number 1, the use will not endanger the public health or safety. Applicant's findings of transportation, potable water, wastewater, and stormwater management will be addressed in accordance with the following paragraphs. Number 1, transportation. The main subdivision entrance will be connected directly to NC 168, Currituck Highway. Deceleration and acceleration lanes will be provided in accordance with NCDOT standards and will be approved by NCDOT prior to construction. Connectivity will be provided to the existing farm land to the southeast auction site and to the west. Roadways will be laid out generally as shown on the master plan and will be in accordance with the approved right-of-way and pavement with characteristics using NCDOT Complete Streets Planning Manual as a guide. Appropriate access has been made for emergency service vehicles in accordance with applicable standards, including the North Carolina Fire Code. Number 2, potable water will be supplied by Currituck County via the existing 12-inch main located on Currituck Highway, which will be tapped and looped through the site. Fire protection will be provided in accordance with the UDO standards and the applicable ISO standards. The water system will be modeled to demonstrate adequate flow and pressure for fighting fires while meeting the maximum day domestic demand. Number 3, wastewater. Centralized wastewater treatment and disposal facility will be provided in accordance with North Carolina standards and approved by NCDEQ and/or NCDHHS. A wastewater collection system will be constructed by the developer and managed by the wastewater utility. The utility will be regulated by the North Carolina Utilities Commission. Number 4, stormwater management. A major drainage way known as Rolling Creek Canal runs through the development property. Due to the importance of this drainage feature, not only to the development, but to other properties located both upstream and downstream of this property, the developer is committed to cleaning and laying back the slopes and stabilizing the portions of Rolling Creek that runs through the Eagle Creek subdivision and to the railroad next to NC 168. The developer has also committed to improving the common property line ditch along the ranch land and the auction property, and to excavate a new canal that would be available to ranch land along the common property line from the auction site, PIN number 00230000007000. That's a staff addition. And to the south of the power line easement. Subject to the obtaining right of entry to other properties, the developer will also improve the sections of Rolling Creek downstream of the Falls property that requires maintenance. On-site stormwater will be managed by constructing a series of stormwater management ponds that will be interconnected and will retain and slow release stormwater to existing outlets. In addition to modeling and retaining stormwater to the UDO and stormwater manual standard of the difference between runoff from the 10-year developed condition and the runoff from a 2-year wooded condition site, stormwater will be modeled for the 100-year storm without adversely impacting neighboring properties. Implementation of this plan shall improve drainage for neighboring properties compared to existing conditions. Stormwater will be conveyed to on-site retention ponds through a combination of curbs with inlets, stormwater pipes, and open vegetated swales. Number 2, the use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands and will be in harmony with the area in which it's located. Applicant findings. Land use to the west is agricultural with one dwelling unit located approximately 435 feet from the nearest property line and is approximately 565 feet from the nearest structure. Land use to the north across the railroad and Currituck Highway is commercial. Land to the east is farmland and residential lots. And land to the south is residential lots. Perimeter compatibility is being addressed as follows. To the west, a 50-foot farm buffer is being provided, followed by a 60-foot roadway corridor. So the nearest dwelling unit will be at least 565 feet from the existing residence on that farm. A vegetated buffer is also being provided along that property line. To the north, Currituck Highway, this is number 2, to the north Currituck Highway, a berm is being provided along the highway along with lakes flanking the main entrance road. The nearest dwelling unit will be set back at least 200 feet from the highway right-of-way at the closest point. The visual impact of the development will be minimized by setbacks, berms, and landscaping. Number 3, to the east, a 50-foot vegetative farm buffer is being provided along the existing farmland. Traditional single-family dwelling lots are being proposed in the area that back up to existing dwelling units in the adjacent ranchland subdivision. Even though the dwelling types are believed to be compatible, a minimum 50-foot buffer is being provided between the developments. To the south, number 4, compatible residential development is being proposed and a minimum 90-foot open space buffer is shown to the property line. 5, limited commercial development proposed to be located interior to the development and will front along the landscaped entrance boulevard. Number 6, lot size ratios and density ratios are compatible to other developments that have been approved in the immediate area and in other parts of Moyock. The applicant is not aware of any adverse impacts on land value in the surrounding area. The applicant anticipates that its proposed stormwater improvements may benefit the property values of the existing or of the nearby ranchland community. The development is anticipated to increase the values of nearby properties by improving the existing drainage problems. The site is adjacent to non-agricultural activities, including the ranchland neighborhood to the south and southeast, and commercial and residential uses to the east. The site is also in close proximity to the Eagle Creek neighborhood. The proposed use is compatible with these adjacent uses and further the county's goal of concentrating new residential development in the vicinity of existing residential development. Nearby communities include existing planned communities of 588 lots to the west, a 275 lot subdivision to the east, and 426 lots under development to the north of Currituck Highway, all in the vicinity of the Falls Track. The development is appropriate for the location as it continues existing development patterns in this part of Moyock. Lot area ratios and density ratios are consistent with other developments that have been approved recently nearby and in other parts of Moyock. Number 3, the use will be in conformity with the land use plan or other officially adopted plans, staff findings. At its May 6, 2019 meeting, the Board of Commissioners determined that this development was compatible with the land use plan, the Moyock Small Area Plan, and surrounding neighborhoods because, 1, the proposed conditions for the property will improve drainage problems on the property and with nearby ranch land subdivisions if improvements can be made to the drainage system on off-site properties, and 2, the PDR is compatible with the existing Moyock Township subdivisions. Number 4, the use will not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities, according to staff findings. Number 1, on December 11, 2019, the Board of Education revised its statement about the school district and determined that the development is entirely within the Shawboro School District. The superintendent also advised that the Shawboro Elementary School has capacity for the 119 elementary students this development is projected to generate, with phases 1 through 5 expected to generate 75 of those students based on the July 9, 2004 Tischler study student generation rates. Number 2, the county can provide adequate public facilities, including but not limited to fire, emergency services, and law enforcement to serve this development. That's my motion.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. The board has a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll ask the board then for a vote. All in favor of this motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 6-1. Okay. All right, that concludes the public hearings, and the next item under new business is consideration of a resolution assigning county property located at 117 North Point Boulevard, Moyock, North Carolina, for economic development purposes.
Mr. Chairman, this matter is before you tonight as the first step of a two-part process in order that the Truck Accessory Center may enter into a lease agreement with the county for excess property or surplus property surrounding the Moyock Visitor Center. Under Chapter 168 of the General Statutes, a county may lease property that it owns to another party, but any lease for 10 years or more, the county must utilize the same method it would utilize to sell county-owned property. And so that basically require the opportunity for others besides Truck Accessory Center to have an opportunity to bid on a lease as well. Under Chapter 158 of the General Statutes, the county may hold property for economic development purposes, and under that authority may lease property for a long-term period of time with direct negotiation with the lessee. And so what we're doing here is, in order to allow for direct negotiation with Truck Accessory Center, we are asking that the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution that provides for a portion of the 4.4 acre property that the county owns and is utilized as a Moyock Visitor Center be set aside and be designated as property held for economic development purposes.
will then let the county staff come forward at a subsequent commissioner meeting with a lease agreement negotiated with Truck Accessory Center for you then to be able to enter into. The bottom line is Truck Accessory Center is looking for at least a 15-year lease. We're glad to answer any questions.
If we needed it, do we have an out?
There, in the lease that you will see, there are clauses that allow for, I think it's maybe 30 or 60-day termination by either party. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I will move for adoption of the resolution.
I second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any other questions? I'll ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Resolution passes. Thank you. Okay, the next item of business is the consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Have a approval, have a second. Motion and a second. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, and at this time, I'll recess from our general meeting and move into our special meeting of the Tourism Development Authority. And with that, I believe.
I think you need a motion, Mr. Chairman, to recess the regular meeting, and then you can open the TDA.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, you may recess the meeting as chair, and you may convene
Yes,
the meeting of the Tourism Development Authority.
thank you.
My apologies.
Nope, that's okay.
That's why he gets paid the big bucks.
Right.
So with that, I'll turn it over to the county manager.
And I apologize. I'm not sending a text message. My computer, like I said, had issues, so I'm reading the agenda packet on my phone.
You're doing better than me. I left my ringer on. So,
So the budget amendments before you, and if the board's comfortable, I'll just do these as a slate and kind of inform you what they are. The first one is essentially the 25% reduction in tour operator permits that you all approved, recognizing that financially. The next is adding capital items back in. We added those back in for the general fund at the last meeting. These were left off. It's basically vehicles that you're looking at. Then you have the tourism side for the extra the COVID. Let me get this right. The COLA that was put off because of COVID, where we went back to try to make folks to compensate them for that. This is for those part-time employees that worked minimal numbers of hours. You also have a budget amendment in there for it's another work truck. It falls under a different line, as well as just some cleanup for Wellhead because of the extended season. And that's all that I have, Mr. Chairman. Be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Any questions from the board? If not, I'll ask for a motion.
Move to approve.
And a second. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. And I'll ask for a motion to adjourn from TDA and reconvene to our regular meeting.
Second.
Have a first and a second from Commissioner McCord. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, and with that, we will discuss the mobile classrooms.
Just a 5-minute recess?
Oh, okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Be back in 5:25.